Okay, we'll bring this meeting back to order and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kirtley.
And Ms. Bells, did you say, do we have anybody here from Mercy? I didn't see Michael. Okay, we're going to skip down to 2 o'clock for America. Come on up, ma'am. And I think they said you might have a couple of folks on Zoom as well.
Yes.
I know we're a little ahead of time for you.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully he'll get on here soon. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ted Schwendeman. I'm the pharmacy director at PharMerica in Sand Springs, Oklahoma. So on behalf of PharMerica, thank you for the opportunity to address you today. By way of background, PharMerica provides closed-door pharmacy services to patients residing in congregate care settings, including hospice facilities, nursing skilled facilities, assisted living facilities, and other long-term care settings in the community. PharMerica has a long history of providing services in Arkansas. We are incredibly proud of our past and current partnership with the state and with the Board of Pharmacy. As you know, pharmacies such as ours are located off premises from the locations they serve. This model often comes with considerations balancing the needs of our patients with the operational delivery of care. We come before you today to request approval of an out-of-state license for our Sand Springs Pharmacy, located at 207 West 1st Street, Sand Springs, Oklahoma. Our Sand Springs Pharmacy location is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to serve patients in the state. The pharmacy will complete normal deliveries of both new and refill medications on a routine coordinated basis with the facility. Typically, as you know, assisted living facilities do not have the acuity of patients in their skilled nursing environment, resulting in more stable medication regimens requiring less emergent delivery, and are able to have all medications delivered on the normal delivery run. This is true with the assisted living facility intended to be serviced by our Sand Springs Pharmacy location. Research of the pharmacies that provide scheduled 24/7 services show the closest location to this assisted living facility is Searcy, Arkansas, which is over 3 hours away from the facility. This compared to the 2 hours and 3 minutes from our Sand Springs location. With the growing trend of all pharmacy markets and the loss of 24-hour retail pharmacy locations, our pharmacy teams have adapted to ensure that we provide the most complete care for our patients. We have worked to ensure that first, all medications for a new admission or new orders are supplied and delivered on the regularly scheduled delivery route for the facility. And secondly, we have prioritization mechanisms in place for the rapid receipt, entry, filling, verification, and delivery of urgently needed medications to all facilities and patients we serve, no matter the location. Patient care is a top priority for our pharmacy, and we believe our ability to provide the specialized services and care will allow us to be best positioned to meet the needs of these patients. In closing, I would like to emphasize that it is in our sincere goal to honor the considerations of the board and staff, while at the same time balancing that with the current on-the-ground operational considerations in the delivery of care. At PharMerica, we remain committed to the shared mission in helping the people we serve have the timely access to medications they need. We appreciate the board's consideration of this application and welcome any questions you have.
Just for the board's background, I apologize, should have possibly started with this, but PharMerica is a company that did have a couple of locations within the state of Arkansas previously. We've had out-of-state locations for that company in the past. We knew that we had both a Northwest Arkansas and a Central Arkansas location. for that, and they're concentrating only in the area of long-term care. With in-state locations, it was never a question of whether or not someone would be able to do a backup or an emergency fill or anything else, but they have closed both of those locations. When we were looking at this, Dr. McCready and I we did not feel as if board staff could approve an application focused on long-term care pharmacy for a pharmacy that could not possibly meet the standard that the board had explained meeting your definition of emergency care. As you heard during even reciprocity this morning, when we start talking about the expectation for emergency care, the way the board has always explained it is within a couple of hours, or I would say like 2 hours. I understand there could be exceptions to that rule, especially if there's a complicated IV that has to be prepared, that you would have to go in and not only prepare the room itself, potentially with an initial cleaning, but also getting the IV prepared, and it just takes time. But on things like oral medications, commercial medications, the expectation the board has always expected for staff is that the interpretation was within a couple of hours. This pharmacy is on the other side of Tulsa from Arkansas. And while I don't drive that routinely from Northwest Arkansas, I've driven it quite a few times from here with a child in college there. And it generally is not going to even have the possibility of 2-hour turnaround. We do not have a plethora of 24-hour stores. As I think you heard even earlier today, I think some people think we have a contract and there's 24-hour stores and they'll take care of it. What the board has consistently said is if you are the pharmacy serving this patient, it's not your responsibility to have a contract that you hope someone else will give emergency care. You are responsible for emergency care. So with that, we said, you can come and ask the board for that. And I think the board has several options. You could approve their application, you could deny their application, you could approve their application, but state that because they're unable to give the required emergency care, they cannot take care of institutionalized patients. So they could do packaged medication for people in their homes, but if they're institutionalized, if they're unable to give emergency care, then that's a conflict. So with that, I kick it over to you guys.
I understand the facility that you serve. Is it just one?
No, the
It's in-
24-hour pharmacy in Arkansas. is generally in Searcy.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, there's one assisted living facility that we plan on servicing. It's in Fayetteville, Arkansas. It's only about 30 minutes further than our regular daily delivery route at one of our facilities. And I think it's Colcord, Oklahoma. Yeah, Colcord, Oklahoma, right on the border. So, so we're just over that 2-hour mark for servicing, is what he was saying. In the nearest 24-hour pharmacies to that assisted living facility in the state is 3 hours away. So we're closer than the nearest 24-hour pharmacy within the state.
Well, but there are other 24-hour, long-term care pharmacies in the state.
And we have tons of pharmacies that do emergency care after hours for their patients, even though they're not 24 hours. I think half the people at this table do that.
So do you, just typical oral prescription medication, or do you provide IV therapy and other such services?
So we do not have an IV clean room in our pharmacy, but we do provide like pre-mixed manufactured bags of IV fluids at our pharmacy.
So you have a contract with someone else to do the sterile side then, since you have to for what, CMS?
Yes, we'll use our sister company called Emerita. And they're in Tulsa. On the west side, we use a company called Vital Systems out by Oklahoma City. If it's that direction.
Could I get you to back up just a minute? I'm not a pharmacist, so you got to explain things to me in terms I can understand.
Sure.
So let's take an example. Let's say it's 2:00 in the morning and a patient requires medication. Now, take me through the steps of what would happen for you to get medication to that patient in Fayetteville.
Absolutely. So like I said, we are a 24/7 pharmacy. We're open 365 days a year. So we're always available, always answering phones. As soon as a prescription calls in, if it's after hours, we're usually given heads up by the nursing home facility that something's coming in. When we receive that order, we'll fill it. We have our own company drivers that we hire to deliver specific meds. This is in addition to the daily deliveries that we have leaving our pharmacy.
When you're saying driver, you mean a person driving a motor vehicle from the other side of Tulsa to Fayetteville?
That's correct. Yep.
And how long would you anticipate that taking?
Google says it's 2 hours and 3 minutes. And so we usually, when we get heads up and we know that a medication is needed urgently, we'll get that driver coming in, getting it ready. So when we process that medication, it's ready to go out the door.
Okay, thank you.
John, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the typical cutoff for driving distance, or like what has traditionally been is it an hour and a half? And gives you
So-
30 minutes to get it ready, or?
The thing is, this is something that has become a more acute attention issue on staff, that we have decided to bring it to the board for further guidance, because we hear through, pharmacists reciprocating everything else, more and more and more people that want to do long-term care from a great distance. And knowing that we are about to have some discussions about things like our emergency kits and emergency service, it just does not even appear possible to provide the legally required emergency service if you're more than 2 hours from the border of our state. So whether that is an arbitrary decision or not, if the board has told us in the past, you have to be able to give service within a couple of hours, it doesn't seem possible without a very specific plan. I mean, if he came in here and said, we have a contractual agreement with, X pharmacy group that is, in that town, and they have agreed to take after hours call for us, I think that's a different issue, but we don't have that. And I have seen, not specifically PharMerica, but you heard earlier today, oh, we have a contract. So if there's a 24-hour pharmacy, we send it there and we send basically an Uber driver to pick it up. Like, I don't think that's the service that is intended, nor is it guaranteed service. I think that is giving an answer that probably works for a lot of states of, oh, we've got a plan for it. Well, you don't even know if that pharmacy has the ability to fill those prescriptions in the night versus having a contractual agreement with them. But we thought, I don't know exactly what the line is, but if you're more than 2 hours, that seems to be a pretty clear line.
To just stated a different way, the drive time alone already exceeds
The interpretation of the board has been in the
targeted
past.
time.
Yeah.
So therefore, processing of the order, which is going to take at least some amount of time greater than that,
Yes, sir.
makes the matter worse.
And people have asked, it does not say specifically 2 hours in our board rule on this, but it says emergency service. And that has been the interpretation of the board for many years, that to me, I think the standard of care that is expected is within a couple of hours. There are emergency kits to take care of many emergency needs when you have the absolute immediate need for a drug, but for a stat order, that's what we have expected. And there are drugs that you just can't take care of with the emergency kit or needs. And if the emergency kit gets raided all day and it hasn't been replenished, like, you still have to be prepared to do that emergency order, even if the emergency kit would have had the drug, but it's been depleted.
But this is a Fayetteville long-term care facility trying to contract with out of state.
That's what they're asking for. But at the same time, I mean, the next one could be back in North Little Rock from a location out of state, which you can't get from anywhere out of state to North Little Rock in 2 hours either.
Correct. So this one is an assisted living facility that isn't allowed to have an emergency
Emergency kit.
drug kit. So
but-
we do have emergency drug kits that we have in basically all of our homes in Oklahoma that are allowed to. We do have multiple facilities more than 2 hours away, and we don't seem to have any issues with those in Oklahoma.
So if there's no emergency kit, you really would have to take every one of these in the middle of the night if they needed it.
Mhm. And that's what we do. We plan on that. In an assisted living facility, it's unlikely that someone would get a new prescription at 2 a.m. So most of them will all be filled and delivered on the regular delivery run. So,
But this license that you're applying for is not just for this facility. It could be used for any assisted living or long-term care facility, correct?
that's correct.
So can I want to ask clarification on something? You said the interpretation of the board and there's some 2-hour rule. Is that within 2 hours of the state line, or is that within 2 hours of the facility that you're servicing?
It's within 2 hours of receiving the order to get it to the patient.
And that
So
applies to in-state home health as well?
if it is an institutionalized patient, so there are assisted living group homes where the people have the ability to, and someone's gonna get mad because I'm not in that realm and I'm sure they're nuanced this, I don't understand, but they're a place that you would see as being an assisted living place where the people actually have the freedom to leave and come and go or have an apartment living. And it's a very low level of their healthcare, but it's a structured living environment. And you have assisted living where they are in that facility and do not have the free will to leave. That's generally what I'm talking about as being an institutionalized area. They are spending the night and don't have the ability just to leave. When I had a relative in a memory care center, they could not leave without being checked out by a responsible adult and having their care taken care of. So what we looked at is if the board has set up a standard that it's within a couple of hours, if you can't even get there in a couple of hours, it's impossible to give the expected service in a couple of hours.
So if we had a long-term care pharmacy that was in Texarkana on the Arkansas side, and they wanted to service a long-term care facility in Jonesboro, they wouldn't be allowed to do that because they're outside the radius.
No, we would not have held up that application for, a couple of reasons. One is we oftentimes do not know where the facilities are they are trying to serve. So that's not a requirement of your pharmacy application. But when it is an out-of-state pharmacy that is greater than that distance, I mean, we haven't seen any in a minute or two, but we're like, we need some clarification from the board. We don't feel comfortable approving this as staff. I mean, we have facilities in Little Rock that they may choose to serve Rogers out of Little Rock, but they also are responsible to get that service there within a couple of hours for the emergency.
What if they're greater than 2 hours away? They
They're
have to
responsible.
contract with someone locally or
Yes.
come up with some
Yeah,
mechanism.
we have not micromanaged that as a look when it's, happened in the past.
Okay.
And if you guys say, just give them a permit and when they get in trouble, they'll be back before us, I mean, we can deal with that, but we thought that the discussion beforehand would be appropriate.
It seems to me that by approving the permit, you're guaranteeing that the first emergency need is going to be a violation and a trip before the board.
It's in track.
It's a slippery slope because if you start and say, okay, well, it's only, we can get it done in an order in 30 minutes. Well, what happens when it's 45 for the next one? And so now you're 2 hours and 45 minutes. And where do
know.
you draw that line?
And you guys have seen me for years, the place that have had permits for years that expanded into this, and what you don't see is like, when we're here for reciprocity, I will tell people like, oh, we've got a contract for that. And I'm like, no, if you're going to be the Arkansas pharmacist in charge for this facility, I'm asking you this question because you're taking a law test on this. And that's proving you have knowledge of it. And I'm telling you right now, if you fail to do this, you're going to get to sit in this chair and explain to the board why you did not do what was legally required, which caused that patient to suffer. I get to kick it to you guys, let y'all make it.
So I guess I'm just trying to what I'm trying to figure out is, I mean, does it really even matter if it's out of state or in state? It's really, is the emergency services is what we're considering, right?
Yes. But,
Not the location of the pharmacy?
Yeah. but
Okay.
if you're more than 2 hours from our border.
Yeah,
I
I get
it's-
that, but
It's a different thing. If I drew a bubble, like you're automatically outside the bubble on this.
yeah, I
So
understand that.
we're actually only about an hour and 40 minutes from the state line. So,
That's if traffic goes well trying to get around Tulsa. I mean, I've driven that.
I'm assuming all your facilities are not on the Oklahoma-Arkansas border.
no, we have facilities in Oklahoma City, down by Broken Bow.
I'm talking about facilities that you're servicing inside the state of Arkansas.
Correct. They're all up and down the east section of Oklahoma.
The western side of Arkansas, is what he's saying. Fayetteville, Fort Smith, I don't know how far in it goes. Are you like all the way to Eureka, or is it just Springdale, Fayetteville?
No, we are only looking at one facility in Fayetteville, Arkansas. That's it.
Do you know how many facilities, I'm asking out of ignorance, that you serviced previously out of your Northwest Arkansas pharmacy?
I don't know the answer to that. I know.
You didn't work there, I realize, but
Yeah.
I knew they had a good bit of business and a good number of homes that they covered in that area.
They
had pharmacies.
lost some contracts.
Yeah.
And then, so this is one contract that they're wanting to keep because it's a larger corporate contract. And so it's just ideally served out of my PharMerica location.
Oh, Brian, I think what you're getting at though is if we don't know how far somebody else is servicing somebody. We just happen to know in this case, so it makes it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm kind of, but I understand. So if it's an in-state application, we may not know that where they're trying to service, but I think what Dr. Kirtley was saying, or what my takeaway was, when it's an out-of-state, then you automatically assess how far they are from the border.
Yeah.
Because it becomes a question that needs to be asked.
Were we to approve this and the company then next wanted a contract with a facility, say in Eureka Springs or Conway or North Little Rock, would we be seeing that again? Is this our one shot?
We don't know where they're going to have future contracts unless you give them some approval that limits where they can do it.
But there would also be an understanding, though, that based on what the board's interpretation of emergency services is, that they would meet that definition. And so you don't have any local contracts for emergency services? I think you said that earlier, but
No, sir.
okay.
And I don't know if you deny a permit application, outright and say, no, you can't have a permit. But you could say, it's our interpretation that you're not at this facility because of these reasons. You're not meeting that. Non-resident resident, non-resident retail.
It's a non-resident permit, but we've had other pharmacies in the past. It's just like compounding. We've had pharmacies that wanted to do mail order that included compounding, that had all kinds of compounding issues in their background. And we would sign an MOU with them of, we're going to give you a permit, but you can't send any compounds unless you come before the board at a later date and get that approved. So because it's all under one permit. Like, we've had the board say, we'll offer you this if you'll agree to it. Otherwise, we're at a standstill. And you can table it and say, we would suggest coming back at a future date with an approach of how you have a contract to fulfill this, that someone's, in the bed of the truck with you when it's going down the highway.
I would add that when the application came in, I sent him some questions. One of them was the 2 hour limit. And this is Dr. Swinderman's statement to me. We are a 24-hour pharmacy and have a pharmacist available. In Oklahoma, we have a 4-hour window to deliver medications on new admissions. According to Google, we are 2 hours and 3 minutes away from Steele's Assisted Living Center. Can you clarify the 2-hour window? It is for communication. Is it for communication or receipt of medication? We do have a few employee drivers and delivery vehicles designed for stat orders. We are very fast and efficient at delivery, but a 2-hour start to finish may be difficult. So in their initial letter to us, they said it would be difficult to make that 2-hour limit. That's his statement. I just wanted you to have that.
Well, that's what I was wondering, from the time you get it, how quick or not just to hurry, but how quick do you get it out the door to be on the route to get there in 2 hours and 3 minutes?
So we expect our drivers to be there within 30 minutes of when we call them. So if it's 1 or 2 medications, I mean, it can be 5 minutes or 10 minutes to get them out the door. It's not tough. And so it's pretty reasonable for them to get their prescriptions within a short period of time. It's not possible to probably do that exact 2-hour cutoff, but if there's a leeway a little bit before and after, I mean, 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 40 minutes is easily doable.
And who really gets to make the decision if they need it at 2 a.m. or if they can wait till 8 a.m.?
The facility. So if they've got an order that comes in, we'll ask them, does this need to be statted right away? Or can it be delivered in the morning? We've got overnight drivers. We have daytime drivers. Most of the time, any medication that comes in overnights doesn't need to be there within that 2-hour window. It can be 8 or 9 in the morning. And at that point, we can call one of the local pharmacies and see if they would fill it, because they're also not open 24/7.
But you haven't proactively reached out to any of those pharmacies to ask them if they would do that for you currently?
We have not, because we are hoping that this specific instance, that 2-hour window is a slight plus or minus 2 hours. If we take on other facilities, we will absolutely do that. And as far as I know, there's no other facilities we plan on taking. So this is a one and only facility.
I can honestly say in all the applications that have come in that I've talked to people, I've never said it's a 2-hour window, give or take. Arkansas requires our state licensed pharmacies to meet the 2-hour requirement. And so we've always required everybody else to meet it also.
Does the facility have any say in this, or is that anything that we?
Well, there are a couple things at play here. The facility chooses their pharmacy provider for their emergency kit, or they work with someone for their emergency kit, and they get to choose their provider for all the Medicare A beds. Anyone that is a self-pay patient in any of these facilities has patient freedom of choice to choose whatever pharmacy they want. So when he's talking about a contract, my best guess is they're talking about having a contract for the Medicare A beds, or in this one, I don't even know if it's assisted living. I don't know how you're talking about a contract with it, because all those patients have freedom of choice.
Correct. They do not have to choose us to fill their medications. We just offer
So
it.
what kind of contract do you have then that's tying you into the facility?
Because the owners of this group of homes own this assisted living facility in addition to other facilities outside of Arkansas. And so we're just, I guess, offering to be their primary pharmacy of choice.
And this is nothing against the pharmacist in front of us, but this, I'll say, rings of conversations that I know we have had in the staff side several times, where an assisted living in the state of Arkansas might get bought out by someone out of state that isn't familiar with our patient freedom of choice laws. And then there's a new preferred pharmacy. And we've unfortunately seen many instances where, I mean, this happened with my mother-in-law when she was alive, that we need you to switch to this pharmacy that is our pharmacy of choice, or we're going to charge you another $200 a month to use your freedom of choice to choose the pharmacy provider you want. We have always stood by that type of arrangement. And I'm not saying that is happening here, but that type of arrangement appears to us to be an agreement or contract between the home and a pharmacy that violates patient freedom of choice or adversely affects their freedom of choice. So I keep having to correct myself that this is not a nursing home, but an assisted living. In a nursing home, you would have Medicare A beds, and that's where we would generally see a contractual relationship for the A beds or a contractual relationship for the emergency kit. And I'm probably just ignorant of what types of contracts there are, contractual relationships where there's a primary pharmacy of choice in the assisted living side, because all those patients have freedom of choice. If it is one of them that they are not able to leave of their own volition, we have always said that is an institutionalized patient because they cannot choose to leave to go. They don't have the ability to go get their medication or drive themselves to the hospital or the pharmacy.
Yeah, they do not have any skilled patients at this facility.
Well, and once again, not like I took care of patients in assisted living and in nursing homes, but when you say skilled patients, you're going to have to define that for the whole board, because I have some knowledge of it, but when I think of skilled patients, I think a nursing home, like a full skilled facility, even though I know there are assisted livings that have different levels of skilled help.
Right.
So in this facility, if Miss Smith is ready to go to the grocery store, can she just walk out, get in her car and go to the grocery store? Or is she basically there until someone else checks her out?
They're free to go and leave whenever they want. I have visited this facility. It's a very nice facility. It's younger retirees. It's not like you would consider a traditional nursing home. They're very active in this facility.
So if they're free to leave, then the 2-hour window no longer applies.
Then we would not hold them as being an institutionalized patient generally.
Okay.
So I think you could, at that point, say we would approve it, but we are not approving you to take care of institutionalized patients that would have required emergency services.
And that's it, MOU.
Wouldn't that also depend upon whether the facility was providing the drugs to the patient as opposed to not providing?
No, the facility doesn't have a pharmacy generally here. And Harold, I think part of your question is, are the patients having their drugs administered to them, or are they able to keep their own drugs and manage it themselves?
Okay, I'm still missing something. If I'm a patient there and I can leave and I can buy my own drugs, arrange for my own drugs, that's one thing.
You're an apartment.
But he's not furnishing that anyway.
He
What-
wants to.
It's just an option.
Yeah, he wants to.
But is it, or is it, who's accepting delivery of the drugs? When your driver goes, is he delivering it to a patient or is he delivering it to a facility?
To the facility, like
All
a
right, then where are the
nurse. or-
drugs kept when they're in the facility? Are they in the patient room?
That I don't know.
Well, Dr. McCrae's pointed out, and part of the reason we held this is, I mean, why is your facility seeking licensure in Arkansas? The addition of a skilled nursing facility located in Arkansas and in close proximity to this pharmacy location. Describe the nature of your operation in detail. Provider of pharmaceutical services to residents in skilled nursing facilities. Includes unit dose, multi-dose medication packaging, which we don't allow multi-dose for skilled nursing facilities or for nursing homes. Compound service classified as low risk for 797. So the facility you've identified does not meet the information that was provided in the application then.
Yes, was that mine originally, like a year ago?
The date of this one. February of 25.
Okay.
And it is signed by Ted Schwinderman
Okay,
on both lines.
I apologize. I misspoke. It is not a long-term care facility. This is a assisted living facility. They do not have skilled patients. And they have freedom of choice to choose whatever pharmacy they want.
That's in on your tablets as well. That's part of the reason why we have our decision tree of getting here today.
The application was turned in as something else, different.
Those are the
Business
answers that were
model.
in the application that staff was working off of. But it sounds like he's saying he's trying to be an option for patients that are basically in apartment living with freedom to leave. Depending on the level of care, some assisted living has a level of skilled care that they would be institutionalized because they basically, the way I would at least have defined it from board guidance over the years.
Again, I'm sorry to keep asking this. I'm confused. If the drugs are being sold, this contract is with the facility and the drugs are going to the facility, right?
But they're patient specific. It's my
And-
prescription.
And is the facility paying for it?
No, the patient is.
Okay.
In a nursing home, there are beds that the facility is the one paying for that. Like they get a flat fee to take care of the patient and the facility is buying the drugs. And in that instance, in those like Medicare A beds, the facility exercises the freedom of choice, not the patient, because the facility's purchasing it.
This contract is basically a convenience for the assisted living.
So the argument that's being made is this is in effect no different than a patient choosing the out-of-state pharmacy to fill his prescription.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
But I think there's a memory care at that facility. Those patients in memory care are free to leave. I thought they were institutionalized.
I don't know the answer.
For the board, Harold, I'm confused because the application I have doesn't match the information I'm getting. And I think there's a meandering crossroads that we could get the right answers to get some approval, but I don't know what's going on at this point.
Well, I'll just say, and maybe I'm in an odd position here being the elderly consumer representative on the board and not a pharmacist, but I'm uncomfortable with what we're hearing about how this works and how it applies.
Where are the two people that are supposed to be on Zoom?
I think they're on.
Well, do they know the answer?
And we did pull this part of the meeting up early.
Yeah, my name is Dan Lynch. I'm on the call as well as VP of Compliance for Pharmacy for Pharmerica. So yeah, with this facility, I don't know if this is a level 1 or level 2 facility on there. But as you said, typically with these facilities, they do want to contract with the provider pharmacy because it provides them a little bit more consistency in their ability to ensure their patients get their medications, albeit, as you said, they operate more like you would think of a retail setting at times. So for the facility, they typically provide, contract with what we consider a long-term care pharmacy in this case, just to have that primary option that they would say they prefer, because we can get it in the medication packaging that eases in either self-administration for some levels of assisted living or with nurse provided medication management services and administration services. And I do apologize, I don't know the level of acuity at this facility that we would be looking to help service and take care of.
Yeah, their website says independent living, assisted living, and memory care.
If I'm a patient that can leave and get my own medicine, I would never go to Sand Springs to get my medicine.
The medications will be delivered to the patient. So that's a benefit for the patient as well, that these medications can be delivered and that they don't have to leave the facility, and that they can have essentially a single primary pharmacy to help kind of eliminate any potential polypharmacy that may happen in the population.
I feel like you get a lot of different people that could deliver it. So I'm confused why that one is so far that they'd want to do it.
Okay, and my question is, how are you going to inform the patients in the facilities that you are even available to them? Will there be a big promotion or what will you do to recruit them?
We can certainly do that. We'll talk to the director of nursing and the administrator and coordinate that with them. But if need to, we can certainly set up time to speak with residents and tell them what services we offer and the convenience of the deliveries and the ability to deliver meds 24/7.
Yeah, and my issues with coercion, you're in our facility, we want you to use, our pharmacy services. So, that's a thin line right there.
Well, it's not uncommon for a long-term care facility, and I use that in the broadest sense. I mean, long-term care and nursing home, they can be interpreted depending on, are you a SNF or are you an ICF or are you assisted living or are you personal care? So there's obviously different levels, but generally speaking, you may have a pharmacy that is a primary provider that the facility wants to work with, and they'll offer that information to the residents, and they are residents because that's where they live. That's their home. That's their residential home. And so they'll say, we have this pharmacy. Do you want to use them? If not, who do you want to use? And it's okay to use this other pharmacy so long as they meet our medication distribution process. And so whether that's bubble packs or whatever it is that they use, they can, at that level, can require that an alternative pharmacy who the patient has the freedom to choose, they just have to meet the type of dispensing system that they have in place for that facility.
Sounds a lot like med to bed requirements, but for long term. And like you don't have to use it, but it's this option that's available to you. It's coordinated.
In assisted living, patients or the residents can have their medication stored in their own apartment, and they can give it themselves. Or, I mean, by definition, an assisted living facility is we're assisting you. The level of nursing care, it's not necessarily nursing care. Oftentimes you may have an LPN, maybe not necessarily an RN, often an RN, but it could even be an LPN who would oversee quote unquote nursing care. But the people who actually give the medications, if they do, they don't even have to be licensed med techs or a nursing assistant like a CNA. They can just be an AMAP trained individual who has been trained on how to pass medications, but they don't know any more about it than your average Joe.
Correct. As you said, like a lot of times the facilities offer different levels of care and services. Also kind of in line with that, in what we kind of think the aging process, as these individuals get older, that they may want to add the service for laundry services. Then they may want to add cleaning services, food services, med services. So a lot of times these facilities have the breadth to be able to handle all of that. And as mentioned, too, these services are provided in state, even if it's by an Arkansas pharmacy. It's kind of a common setup in these types of facilities to have a primary provider who has the expertise in, as you said, the breadth of long-term care to be able to understand the patient population, be able to evaluate their medications for their needs.
The question before us is to whether or not to approve an out-of-state permit, right? And the interpretation of the services that they're provided is raise the question, that the board's interpretation of our regulations say that if you're going to provide services even to one patient, you have to be able to provide emergency services as we have defined as within 2 hours. So approving the application in light of that regulation, I don't think it changes. I mean, we could approve the application, but if it became known that it was a problem, then it would become before this board.
Yes.
Which means you're already outside the window. So, I mean, I don't know that they're mutually exclusive. It would seem that we could approve a license, but I don't know how you're going to serve that facility within the interpretation of the regulation.
Yeah, I mean, he would like an exemption because he's further away, but unless you want to grant an exemption just because of the distance of his store, I mean, what I've warned other pharmacies for years is if the ones that have come to us that have had these contractual agreements, if you have a contractual agreement and they fail to get it, you are the one that had that patient and the responsibility to take care of them. Like, we will bring you in for this.
Well, and then I'll just go ahead and express the personal opinion that if, in terms of exemption, I would not be in favor of that.
What do you want to do?
The other option is to approve it with the MOU that they cannot serve a long-term care.
That they cannot serve patients. I mean, you could offer them that if you want to enter into an agreement that you agree you will not serve patients that require emergency services, then we'll approve it.
That's the
Option that they can go out and find a contractual relationship for somebody
bring it
to, yeah, and bring it back.
Was that a motion?
Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah.
I move that we deny the application and that we base that denial on two things. First of all, we have a 2-hour standard that at least applies in some circumstances. The information provided as a part of the application is not adequate to decide whether they totally avoid catching that situation where the 2-hour limitation would apply. And for those reasons, I move to turn it down.
Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second? Or is there any further, just, you want to give a second?
Yeah, do we want to deny or give him the ability to withdraw his application?
I don't, just kind of speaking, I think that I would be okay approving the non-resident application with the understanding that, we don't think that servicing this facility is feasible under our interpretation of emergency services. And if they want to come back at some point and clarify how they're going to meet that standard, then we could look at that on the basis, understanding that they do have a way to satisfy that requirement.
And I would amend the reasons for my motion to concur with what Clint said.
Okay, so that is our first.
But I'm saying I would vote to approve their license day with understanding that they can't service this facility until they meet the emergency requirement.
I would not change my motion for that. I don't think we can or should make a motion to approve somebody and then rule on who they can serve or not. I think it's up to them to apply as to what they're going to be doing.
Wouldn't it be cleaner to simply ask them to come back with an application that includes a contract and then we give them a memorandum that approves that?
I think, and Mr. Timpson, I think part of the reason they're asking this is a full denial looks like a disciplinary issue rather than just an administrative
Right.
denial. And I think what they're saying is, you know what? We could table it now, and if at some point in the future you have a plan on serving this population and have clarity on who this actual population is and whether or not they get it, I'm a little frustrated because I've got an application that says one thing, some answers that are in direct conflict with that, and then information that I can look at the facility on even their website that looks like to be somewhere in between.
Well, I'm fine with tabling or
Okay.
withdrawing the application. What I'm opposed to is approving the application, given the current state of the
And
application.
exemptions based on the unknown.
Right.
So do we even
So
take a motion
it
to,
sounds like Harold is withdrawing his motion in
Withdraw
case there's a
his.
substitute motion
Okay.
to table it at this time for future reconsideration for either solving those problems or an agreement not to serve any patients that would have need of emergency services.
so do I have a motion that says,
Well, I think part of that will be, we'll have to get an addendum to the application to clarify what they're actually doing. That would be correct information.
so is that,
But I can't make that motion.
and who's going to make that motion?
Well, do
So-
we have to make a motion? Let's allow them to withdraw until the stipulations that Dr. Kirtley mentioned are provided to us.
Do you need a motion or?
think it helps if you have.
Okay.
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 Personally, because it shows that they did come in and be in the minutes that way rather than looking
Then,
at.
then I'll move that we table the application while waiting for additional information.
Okay, that's a motion. Do I have a second
Second.
on that? Second on that. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Have a couple more quick 10-minute discussions like that on the agenda, but. My microphone's not on. Yeah. We're trying to see if the couple people on our agenda are actually here. As we are looking for that, we do have, got one of them. All right. All right. Looks like up next will be our 1:30, Mr. Burrell. Real quick, I'm just going to kick it off and introduce you to who all you're speaking with today. I know you've been in front of our informal conference today. I'm still John Kirtley. I'm the director of the Board of Pharmacy. And on this side of the table, we're staff members here at the board, myself, Dr. McCready, and Ms. Bales, who's our legal counsel. On the other side, we have all 8 of our pharmacy board members today. And I know you've met a couple of them before. We're going to treat this kind of like we have the informals in the past. In just a second, I'm going to kick it over to Ms. Bales to just go review with the board members that may not have heard it before, that you're basically invited to be able to come back and meet with the full board at a later date, which you're here for today. And then I think they're going to have a conversation with you and we'll see whatever decisions they come up with.
All right.
You have any questions on anything yet?
Not now.
Okay, if you do, I've told you this before, please remember, if you've got a question, wave your hands, get our attention and ask anything you got. We'll try our best to help answer.
That's it.
Ms. Bales?
Yes, in summary, Mr. Burrell appeared before the informal committee on April 23rd, 2025. The packet is in your tablet. He is a reinstatement application and he had his pharmacy technician registration in 2008. He was arrested on February 2nd, 2015 for breaking and entering a felony charge and harassment, a Class A misdemeanor, public intoxication, a Class C misdemeanor. He was acquitted at that time of those charges by reason of mental disease or defect and was ordered committed on July 23rd, 2015. On December 4, 2015, he was conditionally released to Birch Tree Communities for treatment. He was ordered to be monitored for a period of 5 years, which included meeting with a compliance monitor, taking all prescribed medications, and participating in recommended treatment. On December 4th, 2020, he was released from the monitoring program as he had met all requirements of the orders of conditional release. And there are medical records from Mr. Burrell from 2024. When he met with the informal committee in April, the committee members asked him to submit a letter that from a treating mental health professional that stated in that professional's opinion, he wouldn't be a risk to the public if he were to work as a pharmacy technician. And he did provide that letter. If you'll look on the tablet, I believe it's page 4. It's from Arissa Health. Monica Young is his treating therapist, and she did provide that letter for the board's review.
And then does anyone have any questions, or you want to keep looking through it and let us know when you're done looking at it?
Yeah, I basically went to school at UCA, completed that, and I'm also working as of now, working as a what they call a plasma processor at a plasma center, excuse me. I've been there since 2019, so it's 6 years. Yes.
When did you start that? When did you?
I want to say back in 2019. Yes.
Making sure of the time.
So it also says on here, he did not disclose the arrest. Is that part of this discussion, or we're just mainly focusing on, so we asking to bring the letter, he brought the letter?
This case is.
Okay, why the move back to pharmacy?
But I feel like I invested so much into being a pharmacy tech around the time where Remington College and Heritage College was a thing. You know, I actually went to Heritage College to be a pharmacy tech, and it took a lot of money, and I want to get my money's worth. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a pharmacy tech, and not to mention I actually missed it. You know. Yeah, yeah, yes.
Thank you.
So am I reading correctly that you're still in therapy with,
Yes,
okay, and have been continuously throughout
yes.
this process?
Mhm.
What did you get your degree in? Just
I got a bachelor's in creative writing.
nice.
May I ask how the board's handled a similar situation in the past?
It's completely a case by case basis because you never know exactly what the next piece of paperwork is going to be. My best recollection, having seen Mr. Burrell a couple of times over the years, is last time when he came, the board basically looked at the history and asked him to get this letter from a medical provider and bring it back. So I take that as most of the other questions were answered, and this is what the board was asking to see. Whether the board, thinks that was the right decision now or not, those were the instructions as given to Mr. Burrell, which he is answering today.
Anyone else have any questions or any other discussion that you'd like to provide to help us come to a decision?
I think from the informal, we wanted some type of letter that showed that, I don't know if assessment's the right word, but some type of letter back from whoever it was that he was seeing. That,
It's on page, what
I
he,
saw the letter, but
yeah, that's what he provided. And my understanding is she's been his treating mental health care professional for a long time. Even though she is like a licensed social worker.
It seems everybody's still looking at the information. There was quite a bit of information to look at, so
Okay.
just give us just a minute.
When you were a pharmacy technician in the past, were there any disciplinary issues, any issues inside of the workplace?
Yeah.
and I seem to recall you've worked at that plasma center for quite a while. How long have you been there?
6 years.
Okay.
We don't believe we ever had any reports of any issues with him being a technician back when he had been back before like 2015. So we never got a report that he was, let go for diversion or anything like that. That's not part of our file.
Letter from the outpatient therapist seems to. I would make a motion that we reinstate Mr. Burrell.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you, bud.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good luck.
Now, I do have a question though. Like if I do get a job at a pharmacy, do I need to provide the information that I've been, do I have to?
You'll have your permit to take with you
Okay.
to show them that you've got a pharmacy technician permit. And if they ask you about your background, I'd be honest with them and just let them know.
Okay.
All right, man.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Oh, no, I got my sliver over there.
I think half of us. That's the advance where it's pointed.
Got my little cross, so it's not hitting me right in the face.
So we have 2 more plus you.
I think will be quick is. First one I'm passing down is an application. Of what the board had earlier voted on, which was to Arkansas Act 630 of 2025. At our August meeting, the board adopted the at the time, looking through both the statute and other information we need to consider in the statute, we basically come up with an on that application word you question. I think this answers here. How would you need to know what pharmacies like very end? How would you need to know a list of Arkansas-based pharmacies that are included? Well, the statute has very specific. Or about copies if you like. Well, patient or the information.
Yeah.
Have not posted that in the past, but because this would be a public process, there. When I look at this law, it's.
I'm thinking from a consumer perspective.
Yeah.
Like, can
Mo-
I need this drug, can I?
Most of the drugs I think are going to be involved in this are going to be in a specialized area of care where the people that are taking care of you are going to know where to get it. I mean, like, I'll use Dr. Jolly, for instance, he probably knows which specialty drugs they have access to at UAMS, but then he would punt me to like the oncology guys to see what other oncolytics they are trying to get access to or something like that. Oh, I had it off. I just then turned it back on. But going through this, I mean, of course, we've got to know all the identification of who the manufacturer is, if they're under some other DBA, because we realize that some of them have a name they go by instead. What their permit number is, I unfortunately believe there are several manufacturers, judging by some list of drugs I've seen, that either they're under a DBA name that I don't have connected as having a permit, or they just don't have a permit in Arkansas, even though they're a manufacturer with business in Arkansas. What their contact phone number is, if we just have any question about that, their actual physical location of where that permit would be tied to, it should be tied to our actual approval of the permit. And then if they want to designate an individual that has a specific different email and phone number that we should be contacting about this issue. A lot of times when we have applications for a pharmacy or a wholesaler or anything else, we get a corporate office that is about the application of the permit itself. But since this is a specialized issue, we need to know who's the exact person that we need to actually talk to. We've got an attestation. Basically, half the questions I get on most statutory issues, if I send you a copy of the statute and have you read it, you answer your own question. So we're literally having an attestation of, yes, I've read and understand the statutory language. And then for the medication itself, most of this is straight out of the statute. What's the name of the medication? Or, well, we have to know what the name is. If it's got a generic name, are they basing this request based on it as a rare, disease state, an orphan drug, or a limited distribution status of some type? What is the disease treated or the drug class? Because sometimes it'd be oncolytic or sometimes it'd be something more specific than that. The administration route, is it topical, injection, infusion, oral? What is the general cost per prescription? You know, because we do have cost as one of our things that we have to talk about. Logistics, unique handling needs. You know, there have been some questions about this. I think some misunderstanding that I think that some of the manufacturers believe if they open up the ability for additional pharmacies, they have misinterpreted and they think that every pharmacy in the state of Arkansas that applies to have access to that drug automatically gets access to that drug. And the examples I've given is if it has ultra cold storage and you don't have an ultra cold freezer, then you are not equipped to handle that drug. I mean, it's the same thing we went through with initial like COVID vaccines. If you didn't have the negative whatever degree, you know, freezer, you could not handle that drug. Patient caseload, basically seeing like how big is the actual patient caseload. I've had some arguments that there are so few patients on a medication or so few doses of the drug available that if you expand the distribution, that there's going to be a shortage of the drug. And I kind of think of that a little bit oddly, probably as, you know, whether you have 15 gas stations or 5 gas stations, the same amount of fuel is going to be bought. It's just where it's bought. I mean, the cars are only going to use so much of it. Rarity of the disease or condition, given a second chance to ask that. Any unique factors for the medication or disease condition? And some of these have, you know, just like REMS programs, which I've also got named at the bottom, like what is it that's so specific about this drug can't be handled that way? Manufacturing compliance, Arkansas law rules regarding 340B contracting, or is the distribution of this medication restricted in violation of the laws or rules? Some people are not going to like that, but we have a couple of companies that are in the middle of lawsuits over whether or not they are respecting the 340B laws in Arkansas. Has manufacturer blocked or denied access to these medications based on refusal to expand contract pharmacy distribution? And then has the manufacturer blocked or denied access to these medications based on refusal to expand REMS program access? Even during the consideration of this legislation, you know, I have heard from a couple of pharmacies that companies will say, we will give you access to this, but to be able to handle the drug, you also have to enroll in the REMS program. And they go, well, our REMS program is closed. We're not accepting any more applications on it. So it's a false positive of we'll give you access to drug as long as you can meet the other criteria and then not be allowed in the REMS program, therefore staying with a limited distribution network. And then at the bottom, asking what pharmacies actually do have access. I think that's going to help answer the question of whether or not they're in violation, because you basically have, I think, 3 choices. One of them is ignore the law, be in violation of it, and you're facing, you know, fines from the Board of Pharmacy. Number 2 is open up your network, give consideration to people that are actually applying and can meet the criteria to handle that drug. But if you have pharmacies that meet the criteria to handle the drug, you can't just flippantly say, well, no, we're actually not allowing anybody into it. That's a false process. Number 3 is you apply through this for the exception or exemption to hold your limited distribution network the way it is, and the board gets to consider this application as a whole. And at a future date, we'll have to have board meetings to say, here, they're applying for this, and will you grant an exemption or not? And that's a kind of potential 2-way discussion with the applicants for it.
As an administrative agency, do you have flexibility to modify this, or does this have to be approved?
I'm asking for your approval to actually publish this so that people can start using it for their application. And this is in some ways is a living document. So if we find something that we have missed and the board comes back and says, if either staff sees or the board sees, hey, we forgot to ask this, or we actually don't need to know something in it, for any applications that I have in process, if you add something, I'll go back and ask them that. Or if it's information that we don't need, we can ignore it.
Don't have to get approval other than outside of the Board of
No,
Pharmacy.
this is a purely administrative process within the Board of Pharmacy.
Is there any benefit, or could we, and it may not be a good idea, that's fine, I'm just asking, more open-ended one at the end that says, has the manufacturer blocked or denied access to these medications based on any other reasons? If so, please state.
Oh, add a third, like a last question for any other
More
reason and just let them,
open-ended.
yeah. I can mirror the other two questions above it and just say for any other reason that you want to share.
That was the only thought I had. Otherwise, I think this looks great.
Even if they don't.
Yeah. For any other reason, period, or question mark.
Any more discussion? Do other people have other questions?
No, I know Dr. Curley's worked hard on that and I appreciate all the effort he's put in to get that ready. Thank you.
And I probably should have added beforehand. I mean, we do have one lawsuit on this case. But until we're told otherwise by the court, like we do not want to be in a position where we have not started this and given people the ability to get, an exemption in process versus if, part of the fear is if something happened, the court told us we couldn't do this and then later it gets reversed, like we want people to be able to have the exemptions or set up whatever they need to, so that once it is enforced or enforceable, it's done. We did have a request from one part of industry that basically asked us to do nothing until any court cases were basically settled out. I mean, but that's not an option. Like we don't have the option to have a state law where our legislative body and signed by the governor has told us to do something and then go, well, we know there's a lawsuit out there. We're not going to do anything at all until that's resolved in 6 months, 5 years, however long. So I can get you guys a copy of that letter from Bio, but it's not an option.
So do you need a motion on this?
That would be great.
So I'd make a motion to move or to approve as amended by Dr. Jolly.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, this passed.
Other thing that I had passed out earlier is I have a summary document and then a somewhat extensive set of potential rules and to review where we are in process on this. These are rules that we have done an initial filing with the Department of Health for feedback to get permission to bring before our board so that if you guys have any feedback, please give it, and we don't have to even finish this right this minute. But if you don't have any additional feedback, if you want me to continue in this process or don't want me to continue in this process with any of them, I'm looking for that guidance. The next step would be if the board approves these for further filing, it would be filling out the governor's application paperwork and sending this information to the governor's office for feedback and hopeful approval to file these in the public process for a rule change. If you look at it, if you look at the summary document, the first thing is, due to Act 938 of 2025, there are changes made to the actual description of how the board is made up. So we need to do a mirroring change to our rule. Then when you get to page 72 through 76, in short, this would be, the board has briefly discussed this before, allowing for some offsite order entry on the retail side by pharmacists that maybe are not in an Arkansas pharmacy. This is basically kind of mirroring the way that we had approached this previously with hospitals.
So, I think this is a major change. I think that it's a huge change to the Practice Act. I'm not sure that I would be supportive of going this far, without getting a little more of an idea of what all this means, what's possible in this and kind of where that'll put the practice of pharmacy. I think this is kind of wide open and I would be a little more comfortable with it scaled back. So.
Could we just take each one and talk through each one at length so we actually know exactly what we're voting for?
I wondered on the, just a comment, I wondered on the retail pharmacy offsite order entry, if we could consider, maybe limiting that to only for employees of that that business.
So basically adding a clause, we've got,
Hospitals, so, well, I'll add to that,
Yeah.
and not to interrupt you.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, the offsite order in retail, offsite order entry for hospitals. Most of that is like, because a hospital has to stay open 24/7, but it may not be feasible to have a pharmacist on duty 24/7, especially in some of the smaller hospitals. There have been third-party companies that have offered up those services, and we see those come before the board. And that would be sort of a unless I'm missing something, more of a non-issue in the retail setting, where this offsite order entry is more during hours of operation of the pharmacy itself. So a little bit different scenario compared to a hospital. And I wondered if maybe we wanted to just keep it within, to start with the corporation or the business itself, or if we were going to open this up to third-party vendors being able to do offsite order entry for a retail location, which we may or may not want to open up that possibility.
So thinking about the main people that are wanting to do this, I can think of three scenarios, and we can talk through how they fit. One scenario is, a real world example, like Walgreens has a pharmacist data entry center in Arkansas, and they would love to be able to help use the pharmacists there to also help in other states. So in that, they are employees of the corporation. So that works, that's clean. Independent pharmacist that is, out of town doing something, but they can pull up their laptop and help something in their pharmacy, or they have a pharmacist that is, and this could be independent or chain, you have a pharmacist that's on bed rest that can do certain acts of order entry and order review. That way, they've got to be in a HIPAA compliant, area of wherever they is, but it's not in an actual pharmacy. So I think it fits there. I think the third one fits that I have been asked about specifically for this rule, but I'm going to bounce it off you to make sure. One of the things is when we have allowed integration with assisted living or long-term care electronic systems, we have had requests so that a pharmacy, and it's an Arkansas licensed pharmacy, would be able to use Arkansas licensed pharmacist for that pharmacy and as employees of that pharmacy to work in that integration model where it could be done over state line that it has not been now. So the pharmacy in Memphis or the pharmacy in Oklahoma City could actually partner in and help with that, building the MAR reports as the prescriptions come in or anything else. I think the one thing that you're talking about that you're not comfortable with is that a pipeline RX for retail pharmacy would happen. And I have not seen that. I do not know if that exists currently, but I think you're saying as long as they are employees of the corporation, not necessarily the pharmacy specifically, because if three of us own part of one pharmacy and only two of us are a partner in the other, but it's still part of some common ownership corporations where you're an employee directly of one or the other. I think you're saying allow that, just not a third party corporation or just someone who wants to do this on the fly from the beach.
Right.
So it's not that on page 73, unless the order entry is part of an approved request, is Arkansas licensed pharmacist performing all the offsite order entry. I think that part is probably fine, but I think when you get to the manual, it's on page 74, they have to have a manual for this, for the request, specify only a pharmacist or pharmacy technician holding this is under IV, so Roman numeral 4. In good standing shall enter orders or remote offsite order entry location that is a duly licensed pharmacy within Arkansas, or that an Arkansas licensed pharmacist employed by the permit holder is doing any order entry from an approved offsite. Something along those lines.
So would this cover like if there's a flu shot clinic and they want to take a company laptop to make sure it goes through on insurance, that kind of stuff?
Yep. And we have actually allowed that previously, like through COVID, to make sure that, the problem is if you're out doing a flu clinic, if you don't try to adjudicate the claim, you've already delivered the drug and you find out then you're not going to get paid for it. So we've had pharmacies ask us, and we have allowed that as a function of the pharmacy being able to give shots outside of the pharmacy itself.
So is this saying any pharmacist employed by X company, no matter where they are,
But
not
then
just on vacation, what if they just
have
live
an
in,
Arkansas pharmacist license?
they
and-
live in Texas or they live in North Carolina, they
And-
can do it?
If that company is applied to be able to do offsite order entry and that's part of their manual and it's an Arkansas licensed pharmacist employed by the company under Dr. Jolly's suggestion, then yes.
But we had only allowed it in the past, it was in-state. Now we're talking about out-of-state.
We've only allowed it in the past where it was two in-state pharmacies
Right.
doing it. And in that situation, we allowed pharmacists and technicians to interact. So if, if Dr. Frouche has a pharmacy downtown, is also, teaming up with a pharmacy in, North Little Rock, well, they have been in the past able to come before the board and present that they want to do offsite order entry through a contractual relationship of some sort, and they could actually help each other doing that. This would allow it where it doesn't have to be done from a pharmacy necessarily, but it has to be an Arkansas licensed pharmacist. It does not include techs outside the licensed pharmacies.
But the pharmacist could be in any state. They just have to have a Arkansas license. Okay.
That's what we did with the hospital side.
But the technicians would only be able to do it if they're a pharmacy.
Yes, because that way they're under the supervision in the state of Arkansas.
So would they could do it from pharmacy to pharmacy, but they'd have to be in the pharmacy, the technician?
Yes.
They could not do it?
They'd
from
have to be in a pharmacy, which is the current model. It's not taking anything away from the current model. It's saying along the lines of hospital offsite or entry, if you're an Arkansas licensed pharmacist and you have received approval to do this, you could do this and not be in a pharmacy.
What is the approval process?
Well, on the hospital side, it has generally been, it has gotten a lot smoother than it was at first, because at first it was every person had to come in, and the board can set up the approval process later. The approval process, I imagine, is the first time your company comes, you guys may want to see them in an informal and make sure that they understand, here are the things, it's a HIPAA compliant environment. You can't be in the booth at the Waffle House with your kids around you and doing this and exposing patient information. That's the type of conversation we had with the hospitals when it left brick and mortar to be personal space or wherever, some other secure location. There are some questions that we always ask, such as, are you holding this data on your computer, or is this a VPN into a secure system so that if the computer is lost, it doesn't have patient information on it, or the link dies as far as going directly to that information? And I think that that's what everybody's done, because most of these systems, like if you're Pioneer, QS1 or something, you're not running the whole thing on here. Your computer's connecting to it. I think that pretty quickly the board would set up criteria of, if it is, once you've approved that this could happen in this corporation, if they want to add more people, you don't have to come back in for extra approval. You could set up of, if it is the pharmacy ownership is trying to be able to do it for their own store, like, because we have a lot in Arkansas where it's the pharmacist owns the pharmacy. Like, I think those are pretty easy decisions. It's their whole business. There's no other real corporate structure.
What was the rationale for the technician to be able to do the logo? Nothing to do with the rather the fact that if the technician is doing remote order, ultimately the dispensing of prescription is going to be by pharmacy. Whether or not the technician was in another pharmacy or at home.
My feedback from the board previously was there was no comfort level in adding to pharmacy technicians at this time to be able to do offsite order entry other than in a supervised environment, because the definition for supervision of pharmacy technicians is immediate and personal, like you have to be physically present. So if the board wanted to go that direction, that's a whole different change I would have to do throughout the whole. Okay.
I'm just clarifying that I thought part of the rationale was.
Yeah.
But you're on the other end.
Well, no, it's through the whole process. Yeah. In the current thing, you're still in a ratio with immediate personal supervision, even if you're trying to help someone at a different store.
So the difference in these two, the technician can only do this in a licensed pharmacy to another licensed pharmacy. A pharmacist could do it from a remote location, like the beach or wherever, or an Arkansas licensed pharmacist, correct? So it does differentiate between the technician has to be inside a licensed facility. They can't do it from home. It's different for a pharmacist.
Is the pharmacist in charge still gonna be brought up here when there's an issue if the pharmacist is in
Well,
bedroom in another state?
so
Or something happens?
here's the problem, not the problem. Here's the solution. Every system where we've ever approved something like this, the computer system can delineate who did what in the process. So you can see where the breakdown is. So I mean, if we get a complaint that someone saw a HIPAA violation in there, I mean, the permit holder itself is responsible for that and the individual medical professional as the pharmacist is. But I personally believe there are things that you can't hold the PIC responsible for on a corporate decision or someone weaponizing their license, so to speak, which we've had before.
But we bring that person back from the beach.
Would bring that
and
person back in front of the
decide
board.
What they could do, what they
But
had
not
done.
necessarily, I mean, we have not, I'm trying to think, we don't bring generally the PIC in when there's an individual, like personal HIPAA violation. It's that person pulled a PDMP, not the PIC, or that person exposed someone's information. Now, if we had something like the PIC was helping with it, knew it and didn't address it, I think we'd bring them in.
What about, if you're doing this from another state, like say that person potentially could need to be licensed in the state they're in?
Yeah, that's a them issue. They have to be licensed in our state to serve our purpose on this.
Have to physically be present in your state.
Well, so we can't necessarily control what that state would say to that pharmacist. What I'm saying is that for us to do offsite entry for a pharmacy here, you would have to be licensed in this state. That's what we've done with the hospital side. And I think most of them are licensed both in our state and the state they're actually physically residing in. But I think there's some state boards that don't care. We've had several requests over the years to match our retail offsite order entry authority for pharmacists to match it to what we've allowed in hospitals.
But when you added something, did you add it can't be like a pipeline RX for
That's what Dr.
independent? So you
Jolly
added that.
Dr. Jolly is requesting a potential change that I see two places where we would say, where an Arkansas licensed pharmacist employed by the pharmacy is performing offsite order entry. Like it's designating that the rule requires you be an employee of the corporation, not a third-party contractor for a separate company.
And then I wondered kind of where Clint was going. The PIC, if they own the pharmacy, of course, they're going to know who they are working with in another state. But if it's in a large corporation, the PIC may not know them and may not know the situation. I just wonder if we want that.
That's not their
PIC,
problem.
But I wonder if
This
we want
is
them
the
to
permit
partner.
holder.
Only the
getting
permit
the-
holder and them. Okay.
This process, not the pharmacist in charge.
Okay.
Because this is allowing a pharmacist to practice this way for the permit holder.
Okay.
So I do not see how we can hold the PIC responsible. When we've never done it. We've done offsite order entry for community pharmacy for 15, 20, almost, not 20 years, but close.
And we've had errors when we have the paperwork that delineates who was in what area and who did what. And that's who we've brought in before the board.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I was just making sure because they really are not going to have anything to do with getting the approval or going and finding the person that wants to do that?
It's the same thing we do with med errors when, it's not automatically the PIC that comes in. It's whatever pharmacist was involved with wherever the step in the journey happened wrong.
Do we say in here that they do have to be able to tell who's doing what when it prints out on a
Well,
workflow type thing?
We have only allowed that on the hospital side when, as part of their manual, like whenever they're showing us what it is, that they have to be able to delineate who did what in every step of the process. I struggle to think of systems that don't have that ability now. Because if they're set up to be able to do that at distance, they're tracking who did what and where.
Workflow.
Yeah,
Most
it's
of what
a,
have it in workflow.
Yep. Feedback on that? Do you want me to incorporate the suggestion? I have the offsite for hospital there just for reference. Then we have on page 135 to 142, and this actually brings us to two more parallel conversations about emergency kits we need to have. But this, we had at 6/37 of 2025 that is requiring the Board of Pharmacy to allow for emergency kit usage in medical detoxification rehab facilities, or one or the other, both. It does not allow for Schedule II drugs at all, but it also basically, causes us to do some other minor changes in our emergency kit rules, because that is not a long-term care facility. So like on 135, adding and other approved facilities, because it's not a long-term care facility. It's not a jail. It's not a prison. It's a medical detox. So deleting where it's only a reference to long-term care, because that adds confusion that should not be there. Updating language 136, because I realize that many of these facilities, their actual medical provider would be an APRN. So changing that to prescriber, deleting specific terms to nursing home. You get all the way over to 138.
Dr. Curley,
Yes.
can I go back and ask one question about the offsite order entry? I know a lot of our pharmacies, if they serve long-term care facilities, believe they have to be available 24/7. If they get an order for an E-kit, but they don't have to go into the pharmacy, they just need to verify the order.
They can use this.
Would they be able to utilize this to
Yes,
maybe do that in the middle of the night from home and not have to physically go into the store?
yes.
Okay.
I mean, if, like, when it's been a long time, but if I was the pharmacist on call for the weekend, if I'd had a laptop, there would have been times that I could have basically looked on there and gone, no, we filled that yesterday. Please go back and check for it again, instead of me getting to the store and having that conversation and going, we just sent this out yesterday.
Okay.
So I think it would help with some of that.
Sorry to digress.
Page 138. This is adding in, we have had a lot of questions about access to emergency kit medications. A lot of this is surrounding DEA issues. If you go and I mean, you do a quick Google search and find out the DEA has fined millions upon millions of dollars for inappropriate use of emergency kits. But it's basically lining out stuff that we've had in other sections in the past, that we've seen from other states as well, that, storage and access to emergency kit meds must be stored in a secured room with an additional layer of security for the medication to prevent unauthorized access. This is, for the home. This is something that the pharmacist consultant is supposed to be making sure. You can't just have the E-kit in the middle of the hallway. Like, it has to be in a locked room and in some kind of container. Determine the patient's need to call for an additional emergency care if the patient can be managed on site in the facility. These are the things that the prescribers are already doing, but it's just basically outlining this so that it's in our rules as well, which the pharmacies generally, I think, know it is their medications, but lining that out. Any prescription medications or controlled substance removed from the emergency kit without a legal prescription and released from the pharmacy will be considered diverted illegally and shall be reported to the Board of Pharmacy and the licensure board of licensed medical professional. This is one of the big issues with DEA. Those are the pharmacy's drugs, and DEA says the pharmacy must have an order, like a prescription order for that drug before it leaves the kit. Otherwise, the pharmacy is missing drugs and they're technically supposed to do a DEA order. But I think having it in the rules makes it evident to the staff of the homes, this is not medication that belongs to the home. We have to get permission to access it. So it's, Dad, can I borrow the car versus I borrowed the car.
It's not just because it's a controlled substance, but also it's a legend drug.
It's a legend drug. Yeah. And the pharmacies, I mean, we have pharmacies that I think would tell us they have great difficulty figuring out where their drugs are because they have emergency kits that are missing drugs that they did not know were pulled out. But as soon as they're pulled out, that pharmacy is on a 72-hour clock to replace that drug. If the pharmacy doesn't know it was withdrawn, they're on a clock that they don't even know about yet. So they're at risk of violating one of our rules because no one bothered to tell them their drugs were taken. 141, this is the meat of what we have to do with this act, and that is deal with drug categories for emergency kits and medical detoxification facilities or substance abuse treatment centers. I did work with some of our colleagues, like in DHS, that oversee these facilities. Following is a list of categories drugs may be used for immediate therapeutic needs of a patient that are not available from any other source. This is bulk language we've had in other sections, but this is about medical detoxification or substance abuse. And if it's a substance abuse treatment facility, it has to do detoxification as part of it as well. The facility must be permitted by DHS and alcohol and other drug treatment programs, so they have to be appropriately permitted with DHS. Staffed on-site by a duly authorized prescriber with some expertise, board certification, whatever in addiction medicine, and giving the examples of ASAM or ADAM, because this is not just bulk family medicine treatment. You have to have expertise to do detoxification safely. 24/7 staffing of a prescriber to appropriately evaluate the patient's emergency need for medications and medically manage any patient that's in active medical detoxification. If this facility does not have anybody in medical detox, they do not have to have a prescriber on site. But because of the acute need and potential emergencies around detox, at least at this point, our feeling was that you should have a prescriber like that level of care on site for medical detox. The people who we've seen this historically do this are generally very close to an emergency center, where if there is a crisis, because they would not have a prescriber on site, they very quickly could get that patient to an emergency room for whatever emergency care they have. This would be contemplating, instead of that, having an emergency kit, but you have to be able to evaluate that patient fully, because detox can be a life or death situation, frankly.
Medical detoxification facility or substance abuse center.
That is not, no. Methadone, we have 6 specialty pharmacies that are methadone clinics currently. So this is like an inpatient or like a residential treatment facility that would be specializing in these things. A consultant pharmacist review of each medication record to consult with, provide written findings on a monthly basis. If this is going to be medical detox with higher risk than some others, at least staff felt that would be a monthly visit. Assisted living has quarterly visit. Nursing home has monthly visit by a pharmacist consultant. Provision present emergency kit does not erase the emergency need for pharmacies to respond. And then down to C, this is a more specific list than we have had in the past. You guys may want to put other medications as approved by the Board of Pharmacy as a caveat, but in this one, it's a narrow list. It's antipsychotics, 2 doses of injectable antipsychotics. They can pick which one. Injectable seizure control, 2 doses total of diazepam or lorazepam. Oral seizure control, 5 doses total of chlordiazepam, diazepam, lorazepam, carbamazepine, valproic acid, gabapentin, phenobarbital, or levetiracetam. This gives them the ability amongst those medications to decide they can have 5 doses of some mix of those. Most prescribers are going to say, I want 2 of this and 2 of this. This is not for them to have, 25 or 30 pills, but to choose what they want on their little bitty emergency kit. Opioid antagonist, 2 doses total of naloxone or naltrexone. That is if they are using the RX version of naloxone, such as injectable. They can have all the OTC meds right now they want. We don't care about it. They could have all the OTC nasal spray naloxone on earth, and that is a separate issue. Then opioid agonist, 2 doses of buprenorphine. Do you guys have any questions or thoughts on the quantity of that? We're also open to that.
We say prescriber in there, we trying to capture physician.
PA, APRN.
PA.
So when you say 2 doses of buprenorphine, you're saying
Well, they can have naltrexone as well. The request that I had was more for the straight bupe rather than with the naltrexone because of the potential effects.
that's just what I'm putting.
Straight bupe.
And was industry happy with this with kit size? What's the size of, are these all pretty same size?
We have
Facilities
not,
or-
like, this has not been an industry issue yet because what I'm asking for is this is my first official stab and it will go to the governor's office and I would bet that we will get feedback. And I mean, the board okay to say other medications as approved by the board? I mean, I generally put that in there. I just didn't put it in this one as we were working on the list. Page 158. Compounding. We have to have a rule update to allow 503Bs to sell to 503As based on that act. We actually had a piece of guidance that would have opened this up and reinterpreted our rules. But the statute that was passed had an amendment to it that requires us to do rulemaking. We have needed an update to our compounding rules for about the 20 years since we wrote them, because when we originally adopted them, it was while 797 was in draft guidance. There have been significant updates to 795, 797, 800, 825. They link to each other. So in a lot of ways, what I did with this was take some of the bare bones stuff out of our compounding rules, delete all the fluff that is, some of it is high level, some of it is microscopic, but some of it is in direct conflict with what the standards really are at this point. And showing things like, we've had on page 159, we've had people say, well, printing the screen of a wholesaler, you might not have a wholesaler that would have even carried that drug to show it's in shortage. So we would also say, or maintain a dated copy of the FDA shortage list to show you can duplicate this product. Because if it's on the FDA shortage list, it doesn't matter what the wholesaler has. Like, it's approved by FDA to make that copy. At the bottom of 159, pharmacies and pharmacists compounding or dispensing compounded products shall comply with all requirements of section 503A of the federal FDA, FD and C. Other applicable federal laws, rules concerning pharmacy, as well as USP chapters relating to the compound medications below 1,000. That's generally what people are asking for. And then it's deleting pages of other requirements, or like on page 162, combining pharmacist responsibilities and requirements. That's literally pulling it from elsewhere and pulling it into there just to make it line up in the arrangement, because we had a sterile section and a non-sterile section. We're grouping it all together now.
So does that on 159, does that mean you have to completely follow everything under?
It is saying you are following the national standard of USP chapters under 1,000. I think that we have a lot of compounders that have spent a lot of money to do exactly that. And the pushback I get from some of those compounders is, why have I done this to be at the state-of-the-art level that is the national standard if not everybody else is going to need to do the same thing on the patient safety side? Would that be an accurate
It
statement?
also, I think it also cleans up questions around inspection as well.
It does tremendously.
I've been through my inspectors in the room. I'm inspected based on these USP chapters, and some of the nomenclature and the verbiage sometimes in the reg
It's
doesn't really match up with the current current standards. So
It gets all the way over to page 179, which is one of the specific things that we are required to do. And that is 503B to 503A sales. And it's basically in retail pharmacies obtain dispensing medication 503Bs. Arkansas permitted retail pharmacies may obtain compounded medications from an Arkansas permitted 503B, so that we have 503Bs that have been unable to get a permit with us because of issues they have. If they don't have a permit with us, you're not supposed to be distributing their products into Arkansas. Just because you can sell it through someone else doesn't mean you can do an end run around them having a permit with us.
Are they permitted as wholesaler?
They're under, it is a checkbox under wholesaler. Most of them check off wholesaler, manufacturer, outsourcer, and many of them also do repackager because they're literally making specific unit of use packaging for hospitals or something else. So they generally have 2 to 4 checkboxes under our wholesale distributor permit. But outsourcer is one of them, and generally wholesaler, manufacturer are included.
There's no additional changes that need to be made outlining.
Nope, they would have that as a checkbox as their registration with us.
The requirements are simply addressed by the.
Yep. And we have our own requirements for outsourcers as well, but they are held to CGMP standards, not USP. Last thing I've got is page
John,
1.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So if you have a retail pharmacy permit, you can purchase a product from a 503B and resell it at your retail location. Is that what that's saying?
503A. A 503B could sell to a 503A, or a 503A. Just getting straight to the point, a lot of this happened around GLP-1s. And I don't know if it is the right argument or not, but there's a pretty strong argument that if there's a bunch of compounded GLP-1s, wouldn't you rather it come from a 503B under CGMP guidelines and oversight than everybody and their brother that we were seeing applying or shipping into our state illegally on GLP-1s? And
But this is statutory, right?
it's statutory. We're going to have to do it. But, and I'll give an example. I don't have any idea if Dr. Fouché is thinking about this, but he spent a whole bunch of investment and time and energy into non-sterile compounding, but not sterile compounding. I don't think you have any desire, but he has patients that would be able to use these products that he could then buy the sterile compounds from a 503B, just like any other manufacturer, and then also have that as an option for his pharmacy versus going and spending 6 figures of money to also build a sterile lab and hiring extra staff and training and everything else. That's why it happened.
And one other question. We have never, in the past, we didn't say you had to follow everything USP, right? To the letter of the law.
So-
We had certain
We
things.
had very specific rules, but if we inspect you, we would inspect you at USP guidelines, but there are some things we could only educate you on. But there's a carve out in federal law that if you are basically not following USP chapters, then you are not meeting the exemptions under Section 503 of the federal law to compound a drug. You either have to follow USP guidelines or you're supposed to have an NDA or an ANDA to manufacture that drug. So there are ways that you already are required to follow USP, but our rules, being as dated as they were and the way they were adopted, had some things in conflict with it that make it more confusing. We have pharmacies that are doing a good bit of volume in compounding that when our inspectors ask them if they have access to USP, they say yes. And they say, so what do you have for USP? And they go, well, I'm going to have to look that up. Like you should not be in some volume of compounding, like an appreciable volume, and not have an awareness of what USP even is.
I'm just thinking and this will probably cause some conversation when you put it out there, but it is technically a pretty big change from what we had to what we're saying, if you're going to have to follow it all, because it didn't say before you had to follow everything.
Well, I think it is a big change in the book. But I think that the reality is it should not be nearly the change that some will tell you it is, because they are already supposed to be doing this. But they will claim, I didn't see it in the law book, so why did I care? And you go, what about the federal law that also requires this compliance? So I think there's a lot of ignorant bliss going on about it that we might hear some ruckus over. But the fact is, this is the national standard for patient safety that you're already supposed to be following if you are claiming the 503A compounding exemptions.
I just wanted to bring this
Oh, I get
point
it.
up that I
Oh,
think we will hear
I
some.
know there are going to be some people that are going to be boiling upset about this. And here's the problem. If you are this upset about this being the new standard, your argument is that you do not want to take the standard for patient safety that is already being required of you to be able to compound in the first place federally. So I think it's kind of like the conference that we were just at where someone got up and didn't think there should be a law test anymore because they apparently have been unable to pass the law test to do the job they were just hired to do. But there are a lot of people that disagree with me on that. Last thing I've got on this, when you get to page 186, we have had some requests that over the years, our rules that we were basically asked to do way back when on pseudoephedrine are a little bit more thorough than the actual statutory language that was put on them. And we basically had a request to get rid of some of the requirements that are spelled out more in depth in the pharmacy rules and just rely on the statute. We are no longer the meth cooking capital of the world, even though methamphetamine is a major problem in the state of Arkansas. So with that, this would erase any potential conflicts and basically lean back to the statutory side of pseudoephedrine sales. I don't know anybody that's going to be opposed to this, but I know some people that are really going to be happy about it. I think there have been misunderstandings that people think when they read this, that they had to create an entire medical chart for patients, which is not what this was intended to be. But unfortunately, because some people have interpreted it that way, it actually is a more onerous rule than the intent of the rule itself. I've got notes on a couple of those, especially the off-site. And then on that emergency kit thing, the staff request would be as if the board would approve some or all of these for the next step in filing to see if we can get approval towards public filing.
Speaking of quantities, they're still.
On the quantities of Sudafed, there is some really confusing guidance that has gone back and forth on OTC products, including at one point we had guidance that if you are selling an OTC product on prescription, that the same quantity limits applied. We don't care. If you get a prescription for it, within reason, if you got a prescription for a 3-month supply of, cetirizine D, you've got a prescription for a controlled substance that's 90 days at that point, whatever. But at one point we had DEA guidance saying that you could not sell more than 3.6 grams in a transaction of an OTC product, whether it's on prescription or not. We all thought that was dumb, but that was what we were dealing with for a while.
Just a comment on the e-kit thing.
Yes, sir.
It seems to me like the pharmacy that's responsible for that e-kit is sometimes put in a tough spot where they have responsibility for it, but they don't always get information flowing back to them to keep them in compliance. And I hope one day there's maybe an opportunity through automation and that requirement being on not the pharmacy per se, but on the user of the e-kit to use automation to make sure that the pharmacy is kept in the loop through some notification process anytime that virtual inventory gets decremented.
So we have several that have been approved and are doing just that now. We are also working with, industry partners to try to help on some education on this. that's a really good segue into a emergency kit discussion that I have up for you guys as
Oh,
well.
okay.
I'm listening to you.
Okay. Doesn't DEA regulations allow for an automated dispensing cabinet to be located in a facility as long as it's under the pharmacy's control, but it has to be registered as its own DEA, have its own DEA number?
So the problem with that is we do not have statutory allowance for that specific scenario. I've heard of that in some other states. I'm not completely familiar with it. What we are operating on in Arkansas is DEA allows emergency kits that are the property of the pharmacy as long as state law allows you to do that.
But it would seem that if we, Pyxis, for example, so let's substitute automatic drug cabinet.
We've allowed Pyxis for emergency kits. But it does not have to be a DEA registered location because it's still under the emergency kit rule that it's the property of the pharmacy.
Are we to the point though where all those automatic?
I think all of them, we've approved it. Like the pharmacy, for their controls, they've got it set up where it has to release for them to have access.
I don't know why, I thought the regulation, the DEA regulation.
But the DEA won't give I don't think the DEA will give a DEA number to anything unless it's also allowed by state law. I could be wrong on that, but we don't have the DEA won't give 2N authority to APRNs until it was clear in statute and then had to have a process for approval. So I don't know, they may, the risk is if you do it. Yeah. So like the risk is right now, we have allowed them to do it. DEA should be knowledgeable of it, but just because it's an automated cabinet, since it's only been an emergency kit, they have not to this point required a DEA registration at that facility.
Since we're working on compounding rules, is flavoring considered compounding?
The board
in
already took a
Arkansas?
policy on that years ago.
Correct, but I didn't know if this was going to change that.
It's not, should not affect that policy. That was much ado about almost nothing. It is technically compounding, but it is something that this board has allowed for patient ease of use without having to have a separate prescription to add a flavorant to like an oral compound for a kid. You guys even see that much now, oral flavoring? I mean, but most people have like their record of what they added to it and it is, yeah, unless we see expired product in that, like that is not an enforcement priority for us to.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because when you start looking at the compounding rules, that's one of the questions that, because a lot of them have come back and put a little blip in their rule that it's not considered flavoring, which I'm not saying we have to. I'm just saying.
I'd leave that alone.
Looking at it. Okay.
Because if you talk about that, you're going to get a worse solution than the problem at hand. Yeah. I would like to see if they'll give us a motion.
Do we want a motion
We would
on
like
all of
a
this?
motion of whether or not you want us to proceed as presented, or if you want us to hold any of them, or what? On the ones that are linked to statutes, we have to give reports as to where we are in the process.
So could we get a motion and we would need it includes all the changes that various and sundry people had mentioned.
Unless if anybody wants to pull one of them out and have us bring it back at a later date, let us know.
So let's start with, can we get a motion for all of this information as we have discussed?
So moved.
Okay, I have a
Second.
And I have a second. So if there's no more discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, it passes as discussed with changes.
We are past time for our 2:30, so if we could bring them up real quick. Janice, you guys want to join us? That works.
Our 1 p.m. gonna happen today?
We're not doing 1 p.m. apparently. We got our 1:30 and our 2 done. All right. You want to tell us who you are?
I can.
Okay.
You want me to just go into it or you want to give
Yeah,
back?
if you want to introduce yourself, I'll do a quick review, just kind of what we're doing here, and then we'll kick it back over to you.
Sure. My name is Christine Burkhart. I am the Vice President of Pharmacy Operations for Janus RX.
Okay, Christine, I'm John Kirtley. I'm the Director of the Board of Pharmacy, and I'm trying to see where this is on our. Nothing in the tablet. Okay. Nothing on the tablet then. I do have some pictures if I need to pull them up, although my puck is not working. I have to adjust something over there. I can do it a different way. No, I think we'll figure it out. If I have to pass it around, we can use it as well. Janice is here. Janice has an application to operate an Arkansas pharmacy. It's actually just a few blocks from here. In their application process, as we've gone through with like initial inspection, we do have some bright line things that we require, one of which is hot and cold running water. We have a little bit different situation with Janice. They had put in basically a sink that you can bring a water bottle to, and that it will drain back into another water bottle. It is hot and cold. We have generally in the past never approved some that didn't have actually like free flowing, potable or potable running water as an issue. Anything else on that? I mean, that's the main thing right now. We've had some other concerns about the facility itself. But with that, I think Janice is possibly asking for an exception to that.
We are.
So I'll turn it over.
I already introduced myself. I am here on behalf of Janus RX, which has submitted an application for an in-state retail pharmacy located at 712 West 3rd Street in Little Rock. Today, I respectfully request the board's consideration and approval for the use of a portable hand washing sink in our designated pharmacy space, a space that lacks permanent plumbing infrastructure. As outlined in the Arkansas law, equipment specifications, pharmacies are required to maintain equipment appropriate to their scope of practice. This may include hot and cold running water in the prescription department. Nowhere in the regulations or in the Department of Health rules or the Arkansas Plumbing Code is running water defined as requiring permanent municipal plumbing. This offers the board's discretion to allow functionally equivalent alternatives provided that they meet the intent of the regulation, ensure proper hand hygiene, patient safety, and contamination control. To that end, we have installed a commercial-grade portable sink that includes an electric water pump system that delivers a pressurized continuous flow of water, a built-in water heater that maintains CDC-compliant hand washing temperatures, a stainless steel sink basin housed in a sealed cabinet with separate freshwater and wastewater tanks, and integrated backflow protection, and nearby soap and towel dispensers to ensure proper hand washing protocols. This setup delivers both hot and cold running water in every meaningful sense of the term and serves the same function as traditionally plumbed sink. We have also implemented an operation, control, and maintenance plan that includes daily inspection and sanitization, routine replacement of fresh water and wastewater tanks, documentation of all maintenance activities. This ensures the system remains sanitary, compliant, and fully functional, consistent with best pharmacy practices and public health expectations. This is not a novel approach. Portable sinks have been accepted by our other state boards, including Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Alabama, where we have successfully used this exact setup in approved pharmacy locations. In our case, retrofitting the design designated pharmacy space at 172 West Third Street with permanent infrastructure would be a cost prohibitive and logistically infeasible. But we remain fully committed to meeting or exceeding all public health and pharmacy regulations. In closing, we respectfully request the board affirm that our portable hand washing sink complies with the equipment requirements set forth in the Arkansas Pharmacy Regulations. Our solution delivers true hot and cold running water, meets the intent and spirit of the rule, ensures safe and sanitary operations, and enables us to bring essential pharmacy services to a space that would otherwise be inaccessible. Thank you all for your time and thoughtful consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Correct. It's already installed. It is operational. We do. I don't have enough copies for everybody, but, oh, okay. I made them this morning.
But Dr. Richmond, I was curious about the facility after Dr. Holland had done the pre-inspection the first time. We misunderstood and thought they had actually had it plumbed, but this is a cabinet. I have a video of it. I also have some pictures that you may or may not be interested in from the facility and some of their water supply. While there is a room that is a pharmacy that has had a recent renovation and has been clean, everything around it is not. Would you drink the water out of that sink?
Out of the sink, though, I don't drink any water out of sinks, though. We only drink filtered water.
Would you drink water out of the sink that is being used to fill up the jug for this pump?
No, but we also don't do any compounding. It's just for hand
I-
washing.
That doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
Like, if I can't drink the water, I would not wash my hands with the water. And I understand that you have alcohol to sanitize your hand stuff, but if I got something in my eyes, I also don't want to use that water to rinse my eyes out. The sink that your pharmacist is going to have to get it out of, although I understand it's been cleaned up tremendously, is still pretty gross. The other sink that we looked at down the hall, it appears to me there may be an issue with your actual water supply in that building. It may be it hasn't run in a while, but it's does not look good.
Would it be an option for us to bring in a 5-gallon Kentwood jug every so often to replenish that water?
I think if I have need to flush my eyes for any period of time, or if I get something on me that I need to wash my hands, I think there's a difference in having jugs of water to wash my hands versus actual plumb water from a supply. That's been the stance the board has taken for the over 20 years I've been here. The only time I can think of us ever having approved a temporary hand wash station or anything like that, I think we had one time where a tornado literally blew away a pharmacy and they were in a trailer for a couple of days and had to use a temporary water source until they could get the city plumbing hooked up. But for a long-term situation, I've never seen that. And part of this, I don't think, for the board members, they're not really going to be familiar with the company, but it sounds like you're already operating in several states. And is this a model that you routinely do, that you just don't have plumbed water?
For facilities that we're on site servicing specific ACT teams or servicing particular facilities, and they would like us in a nearby radius that there's not a space available with a sink, we will bring in the portable sinks.
Right.
Out of the 40 sites, we do have it at about 10 sites.
I'll pull up, and I'm happy to share this with you. It won't let me play it on screen, but that also means that the whole world doesn't see this. But this is a different sink down the hall, just having water come out of it. I'll walk around the front side so you guys can see this. Water is just milky white with aeration. I assume aeration.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I mean, it ran like that for a good period of time. up from the same way. Not.
that one.
This other room that we were just. Water that you're. Like we're proposing. That's what this is.
No, we don't have to get the water from there. I used the bathroom today in the pharmacy and it was clear running water that was coming out of the sink. I also wouldn't get water to put in the hand washing sink though from the bathroom. We can bring in water to put into the tank.
When you said you use the bathroom in the pharmacy, there's not actually a bathroom in there.
Not in the pharmacy. I was down the hall.
So you do have running water?
There's
coming into the
running
building?
water in the building, yes.
Or why can't you get it plumbed to the pharmacy?
It's a 50-year-old building and they don't even have architecture plans. They don't have plans of the building.
I mean, that's the basic rule.
Oh, yeah.
You have to have running water. hot and cold.
That's not perfect.
About 5 blocks from here. It's an old office building that I think has been clinics.
And I don't know how long that water had been sitting in those pipes, if that was even ran or not recently, before that video was taken.
I don't either. I mean, it ran for a while. I think it was possibly clearing up, but I mean, we ran it for a minute or so and it was coming out like milk.
Have you guys even gotten a quote on establishing something different?
No, we have not.
I mean, I know they're working on the space. Like if you're in the pharmacy, you have to walk down a hallway just a little ways to get to a water source or across the hall another way to a sink. I know they're working on getting the lights functioning in that area again. I mean, the building itself is in rough shape.
It is.
I mean, the building they're being asked to put the pharmacy in is not in great shape.
Leaving the source of the water aside, what do you do to clean the jug that you pour the water into?
That's the process, the policies and procedures that you have there. That's what that is.
So the source of water comes from a
It can come from anywhere.
potable water source. How big is the capacity of the system?
I think it's 3 to 5 gallons, the tanks that are in there. I don't know the exact size.
Yeah, you'll have to come up so you can be heard.
And
I got that. Howdy.
Okay, I'll introduce myself then as well. My name's Ember Fenton. I'm a pharmacist here in Arkansas and I'll be the PIC. So the actual portable sink, the fresh water, I believe, is 5 to 6 gallons. And then the receptacle for waste is about 5 gallons as well. So it'll just flow from one to the other.
I guess I'm just confused. Why would we see an example with milky water? I mean, why would you not show us a potable water?
That was a different sink.
That's not our sink. So
if I may.
That was a different sink in the building. We did not run any water through the janitor's closet sink, which, I mean, it had you could replace the hose and put a blue or white hose that's supposed to be for potable water, but it's been a janitor closet for 50 years.
The water that I have gotten out of the janitor's closet to try to see if the sink would run or not has been clear running. I have at least looked for that. But then when John came in and spoke about how the hose wasn't potable, that was new to me, but it's something that we can replace. But it has running clear. And then When we went into that other space that was not the pharmacy, nor had we ever been into it until that day, it was the sink that he was showing you. I mean, I don't know when the last time someone went in there either. So that's just another side note.
I guess I don't understand why you can say that it's cost prohibitive, but you hadn't gotten a quote to see what it would cost to put water in.
They don't have plans for the building, so we would have to pay an architect to draw up plans. For plumbing,
I mean,
do work on the building.
I mean, this
It's
is.
also not our building. We're just paying rent, like we're leasing the space. So we don't want to do permanent changes that we would have to pay for. It's not our space.
that's kind of like a basic thing in pharmacy, though, is having running water in your pharmacy. Doing those improvements is part of, getting licensed.
Right, and we do have running water. It's just not plumbed to the municipality.
It's when Ember runs down the hall with it.
I want to come back to the cleaning the container for just a minute. Your rule here says that you'll do that weekly. How often do you clean your coffee pots? You have coffee pots in.
No, we don't have coffee pots
I don't mean to be cleaning at home.
daily.
You clean stuff. Why do you clean it daily? Why don't you just do it weekly?
To make sure it's clean, but we would empty it and clean it weekly. We could clean it daily if that's what you would like to require us to. We would do that.
No, I think everybody wants you to go get running water
Okay.
with a functioning drain.
Right.
I mean,
You've required this of every pharmacy that's
Yeah.
open in the state. So why would you give an exception?
last time I think that we really had even a cursory request like this, it was when Walmart in that big warehouse was putting their thing and they're like, hey, could we do this? And we said, we don't think the board would approve that. And they went, okay. And so what they had to do is they piped it in from above and pump it, like you can put pumps in that stuff to get it up and over.
Yeah, and what do you do with you say you have a 5-gallon, say a bucket, so where then does the dirty water go?
So it goes into a receptacle that you would then empty.
That's the
Where are you
blue.
checking it to empty it?
Great water.
The sink, the running sink that's around the hall.
Okay. I don't understand why you can't plumb water in there.
We
And,
will at this point.
I mean, I think if you can't get running water, then it can't be a pharmacy. I
Right.
don't feel like there's a lot of interpretation.
I mean, we've had people over the years that like their hot water heater broke down and they tried to show us, well, I've got a hot plate and a pot. And the board was like, no. Like you have to have a hot water to be able to, actually use for stuff. I mean, that's not even talking about like if you have any glassware, if you ever have to mix anything or measure, there's a whole different issue there.
Curious,
Yeah.
gonna be real. So my question is, since this is mostly just for our hand washing, it still has to be running water because we will have other ways of getting water for when we reconstitute of antibiotics and such, so it's not having to necessarily be drank. And then when you mentioned something about an eye wash, there are things that we could, like the AEDs you put on the wall, you can get an eye wash station from a company as well, if that's something to be thought of as the eye wash station as well. So I just wasn't sure why it has to be constantly running versus it will be running because according to the SOP, we will make sure that it's filled.
How are you
So-
going to wash what you're using to reconstitute antibiotics? How are you going to wash that? Whether it be a graduated cylinder, the equipment that you're using, how are you going to wash that? Is it going to be in the same hand washing sink?
What's the purpose of washing your hands?
To
It's not a
clean them.
rhetorical question.
To clean them,
To clean them.
Mhm.
To clean them with.
soap and water. So-
5 gallons, a toilet, gallon and a half per flush if it's efficient. How long would a 5-gallon bottle last?
Yeah, it's something that we could check depending on how long you're washing your hands.
According to the SOP, we would check it daily, I believe, is one of the lines. And on the back page behind the SOP, there's also the log that has it for daily if we're able to look at those things. So within the realm of basically what you guys will be asking us or what we're willing to do is we will check it daily to make sure that we have fresh water into the, I guess, clean water side so that we can use it daily, multiple times if needed.
I guess just trying to conceptualize. So the video that you showed us
Mhm.
utilizes the system,
That is the system.
running Milky Water.
No,
No.
that's a sink down the hall.
That's where they
Like
get the
I think we have two issues here. I think the first of which is like, as far as board staff, there's no way we could approve a temporary water station that did not have an ongoing water supply. Because like if you use 4 gallons of water or 5 gallons of water, you have to refill one jug and you also have to dump the gray water. So whatever's in it, and it's in an enclosed system underneath this little Rubbermaid thing. If I think I'm going to wash my hands, I'm going to use water that I could also potentially drink or get in my eyes or my nose or my mouth. And I would not be comfortable in that system. It's a cleaner enclosed system. Like if you go to the fair and they've got a hand wash station outside the porta potties, that is an enclosed system. I'm not comfortable washing my hands in that and then going and eating a corn dog. Like it's just too close for me. So there'd be a whole lot of hand sanitizer involved, but I can't wash my eyes or cut on my hand or anything in that water comfortably. I think you have another issue of the building is in rough shape, and I fear there may actually be issues with the water in the building. I think that turning on all the faucets and running the water for a while will improve that. But there may be other underlying issues.
I mean, this is not a temporary pharmacy, correct? Like you're setting up. So in my mind, it should not be a temporary sink if it is not a temporary, like this seems like we're setting up a clinic for a minute kind of a situation, not like a permanent business location.
I know we're under the Department of Health, but does the Department of Health not have an inspection of a new?
There's no license, in my understanding, for clinics there. If this was a hospital, then yes, they'd be looking at all kinds of stuff. But like medical clinics, there's not a permit with an inspection. But we had some other issues that like it's a drop down ceiling, and I mean it would be difficult for someone to come over the ceiling and into it, but it would be possible. I mean, generally, if we come in, if it was in a strip mall or something like that, we would say you have to have some sort of secure fencing or something from the top of the ceiling on up to the roof. But that's not there. It'd be difficult, but I could get over it if I was motivated, but you'd have to be in the building to do that. And it's a 3-story building over here nearby.
So you're saying the buck stops with us?
Yeah,
It
and
seems more basic than even getting an antibiotic 2 hours away somewhere.
I've only been asked this a couple of times in 20 years. And once it was because they were looking at trying an innovative pharmacy concept in the middle of a warehouse that didn't have plumbing in the middle of the warehouse, but they brought it in from above and dropped it down. And I think the other time was like we literally had a tornado destroy or a fire destroy a building, and they had a portable building that had a temporary water supply till they could get the city to hook it up. But in those times, I mean, that's a different issue than, and I mean, how many states are you guys in?
The state number, I think it's 20.
So you're talking about a company that's in at least 20 states. I would think the type of facility this is, it's, along the lines of like a Genoa or something, like there could be growth in this too. I mean, if you want to set the precedent that it's okay to have this as a water supply, it's not going to be the only one we get.
I guess we don't really need a motion, just take no action. Yeah.
Is there any other discussion, or do you want to take no action?
Well, we don't need a motion. I think we just don't take any action.
Okay. No action.
Thank you.
I think yes. All right. I think that's all on our schedule. I have discussion that people are also waiting on. If you look under our discussion items. Yes, 5 minutes. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
You may.
All right, guys, we're back. Under your discussion, I have two things that are about emergency kits. The first one is just as a historic context, jails and prisons for institutional permits. In the past, we have only allowed those institutional permits for facilities that had like RN or higher level staffing, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There have been some changes in like nurse practice, allowing, I think, LPNs to do some dosing of non-controlled drugs. And then we have, basically we have a request for some of these smaller like county, city type jails that they would also like the ability to have some stock meds that they could use when they do have the appropriate nursing staff there to administer them. And they're only asking for non-controlled drugs. So if you look at like page 2 of this document, and it goes on to page 3, I gave some notes back to them about, hey, some of these drugs have like not narrow therapeutic indexes, but there's some things here that you could have as OTCs like diphenhydramine. If you want an oral liquid capsule or tablet, it's OTC, you can have that. Naproxen is available OTC, acetaminophen, ibuprofen. So there's a workaround that you could have an EpiPen, Narcan, loperamide. So several of the drugs they would even ask about are on that. They talked about here above that on page 2 is kind of the list of what they would like the board to consider allowing them to have small stock med lists for inmates that have ongoing needs for these. So if an inmate comes in and they can do a telehealth visit or whatever it is, or if they've got a doctor there, they could have, some antibiotics that are stock. You see like dexamethasone, Dilantin, if they have somebody that is in need of that. Glucagon in case someone has a hypoglycemic episode and needs it. Then there are some other antipsychotics and seizure meds and a few cardiac meds that they believe could help make patients stable in that environment. The review that I've done with, some of the people representing them is, there's two things. One, they do understand that in order to use any of these drugs, you do have to have a prescriber basically evaluate that patient for use of a stock med. Stock med is a little bit different than an e-kit when it's in a jail or a prison, the way that it's treated, because I hate to say it's a transient population, but in some ways it's kind of a transient population. You just never have any idea what's going to come in. But if they have someone that comes in and they go, my blood pressure is up, I'm having, anxiety right now that's making it go up. And the prescriber says, if we could just get them an atenolol, we'd be fine. Otherwise, we're gonna have to ship them to the ER. Well, they could have that atenolol there on site. I think it's overall a somewhat easy request because they would be getting an institutional permit as a dispensary from us, but it would open up who would we allow to actually get those under those guidelines.
Is
they
this
gonna
for
be-
jails only? Or
Is it what?
for the jail only?
Jail or prison?
Okay, but we don't have something like that in any other jail or prison?
We have it in larger jails
Uh-huh.
where they have a much more extensive list that includes
So
controlled
it's only
substances.
small.
So
Okay.
this is for the facilities that are not trying to go after having the 24/7, 365 staff or smaller. So most of the ones that have it now, there's only a couple that are county jails and they have hundreds of people in it. This may be 150 people, or it may be 50 people that they do have a healthcare contract and they're in healthcare, but it's not a large enough facility for the overall healthcare operation we see in like the state facilities or like Pulaski County Jail. I think maybe Benton County Jail and like Crittenden. There's 3 or 4 that are big city jails.
So are we going to consider this a dispensary?
It would be under the institutional permit, you're either an infirmary or a dispensary. And it would be under the dispensary because they do not have an infirmary.
Will they have to be inspected every 3 months by
They'd have to have it.
consultant
They'd
pharmacist?
need a consultant pharmacist to go in there on a quarterly basis.
Some of the drugs here don't seem quite acute. They don't seem acute.
I agree, and that's why I sent some of these notes. And I don't necessarily think that they are acute, but they were drugs that they had pointed out that they think will help keep them from having to ship those patients to maintain them on a drug they're already on.
I'm kind of surprised, for example, to see Lovenox and Warfarin.
Entresto was one of them that
Entresto.
surprised me.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, if you want to say, we're okay with expanding this to where it's not 24/7, 365 RN, but you have to have the appropriate staffing with the legal authority to dose it and they have to be evaluated, but you're not comfortable with some of the drugs, then that is still motion, which I think is helpful for them to be able to care for. I mean, like acyclovir 800, I don't think anybody's worried about the acyclovir. I don't think, for the most part, I don't think anybody's worried about the Augmentin or the azithromycin. You know, the ceftriaxone, I mean, you gotta have somebody there that can inject it, right?
Is there any scope, LPN scope that we need to be concerned with here? Because I know sometimes like within a hospital that may be defined within your own policies and procedures, but is there any?
LPNs, my understanding is have scope to administer oral drugs. I can't remember on injectables, but not controlled substances, I think. So they may even be able to give the injectable. And on the reality, that was not the case when the Board of Pharmacy came up with these policies. I don't think they had nearly the same scope that they have now. But that is something that is beyond our control. We would say you have to have the appropriate person to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But are there drugs well, first of all, is there any appetite to help them by approving drug lists? And if so, are there drugs you would exclude from that list?
So essentially the ask is they're having to send these patients to the hospital right now.
Yeah.
And this is going to save
Thousands and thousands of dollars because
and having to transport them.
yeah,
back
because
and
if you have to
forth.
transport them, you also have to have a guard with them. And it's one of those things where if they could take care of some of these minor medical issues, the people that are incarcerated stay incarcerated versus you losing, being a man down in the jail and having that great expense.
So this is not like, hey, we had somebody come in and we're going to start giving them a regular prescription.
No,
of
this
Entresto.
is stock meds for initial dosing or bridge dosing before you actually get their prescriptions. And we could work with them on the jails and prisons, we haven't had a specific list. It's show us how many people you have and we can work with you on what appears to be a reasonable thing. Most of the time though, they're going to be like, can I get a card of acyclovir 800? So instead of having 5 loose tablets, it's carded. So it's very easy to check. It's okay. You can have a card of 30. If it expires and goes bad after you've paid for it, well, then you'll figure out the next time you want a card of 10. And you just say, there's only 10 filled and you can see the empty holes in it.
And then who's providing these? Are they buying it from wholesaler or from okay. And they're selling it to the prescriber.
In this situation, they got a contract, right?
They'll generally have a
With
health
pharmacy?
contract that they have a contracted pharmacy with, and generally they're going to get it from the contract pharmacy. That's how they've all.
And so this pharmacy is selling it to another permit holder.
No, it's
like wholesale.
It is stock meds under the control of the pharmacy, like an emergency kit. But it's a captive audience there's no insurance billing or anything else.
I'm trying to figure out like who owns the farm if somebody comes in and says, I want 10 acyclovir, am I selling it to a dispensary, a license holder? Like, how do I transfer this legend drug?
So because it's the jail getting it, the jail is going to end up paying for it in reality. I have never gone to the micro level to see if they pay for it
who do you
up front. The jail.
Okay.
Like you figure out these are the inmates that got the drugs, and that's how you figure out who the charge might be attached to. But all the drugs in that are all being paid for by the jail.
Because normally I couldn't sell a legend drug to just some entity.
Nope.
They have to have a license or something.
I think you're selling floor stock to
That's
a permitted pharmacy, another pharmacy licensee. Right?
Yes, I'm sorry. It does have a permit because we would say it's a dispensary and have the quarterly view. So yes, it is another permit holder. I wasn't thinking about it that way.
Based on other lists we've had, do you suggest we take some of those off? Because they don't seem very acute.
That's up to you guys. You can see my feedback on this.
The only thing I can think of is that they're getting a patient that's on Lovenox,
Yep.
or they're getting a patient that's on warfarin or Entresto, and they're trying to prevent an acute exacerbation of heart failure or a DVT or something like that. I mean,
Some kind of a readmission.
So if it's in stock there, then it's on the pharmacy's inventory, and if it expires, then they're.
I mean, it's how they work out the math of that is
I mean, that's.
I wouldn't.
beyond me, but
I wouldn't do it like a kid.
Yeah. I mean, I think you'll learn pretty quick. I didn't actually want 30 of those. I wanted 10 because I'm not actually, I think there are wish lists that happen in a lot of these things where, I mean, we all knew there's the prescriber in your area that if I didn't have this many Z-Packs and this much of this specific cough and cold syrup on Friday, I wasn't going to make it through Friday and Saturday. So I think that if you have this as a potential list, and then we work with them on the staff side of quantities, I think, a maximum of a card each. If they have a facility that has hundreds of people in it, well, I mean, we could talk about that, but if they want to say, hey, you can have up to 30 clindamycin 300, but you have to have orders and a person that's allowed to dose the patient, then they're responsible for that. And if there's an audit, whether by us or by medical board or someone, and you go, well, apparently the jailers were stealing all the drugs. Well, that's diversion and they could get prosecuted for
And
it.
it's not coming back on the pharmacist if it is a pharmacy that sold them this, it's going to be on once you transfer it, they're responsible for the drug.
And the consultant, part of their job is reviewing records to make sure that they are keeping up appropriate records in that facility. Which is what we've done with jails for years. What I'm looking for in this is approval to work with them to help them with the application process, understanding it'll be a limited list of drugs.
This doesn't, I mean, this seems pretty. Anybody even use Dilantin anymore? I'm Kinetics.
I pointed that out.
Warfarin, how are you gonna do PTI monitoring?
Just the top 200 or something.
Got a couple of injectable antipsychotics. But and there are a handful of other, I mean, if somebody needs injectable Thiamine, they have to be treated.
But if you take them to the ER to get them a banana bag, you've basically got an inmate in the ER and one less guard at the facility.
But you've also got a patient who's potentially at risk of alcohol withdrawal, so. Treated in the jail.
It seems like they're
Probably
trying to
have
treat
no-
too much. Yeah, that's what I would go with.
Probably for that. Guess all I'm saying, conceptually, I would be okay with the idea. But that we go through one by one and get justification while we're gonna use each.
This is what they asked for.
So they would have justification in their mind.
If you can see, like, my email, I gave them some feedback and I even asked, after all of this, are there any changes you want to make? And they basically sent back and said, this is the list we're interested in. Said at the very end, sorry for the delay. We don't have any additions or deletions on the list. Thank you for looking into this. And I'm sorry, I didn't put their signature, but I put it in the order of conversation. That was, I think, one of their MD, like medical directors. They did have justification for when they would use it and how they would use it. But if they don't have the right person there to evaluate the patient and therefore pull the drug and dose it, the times they don't have that, they can't use the kit.
Right there, it's their purview to ensure appropriate medication use in their facility, right?
Yeah.
That's not really our purview per se.
Yeah.
They're not asking for drugs that require sterile compounding. They're not asking for controlled substances.
I mean, it's just like a nursing home. Like we tell them they can have the kit. They are still responsible for using people with the appropriate scope of practice to be able to access it or dose it.
And have appropriate processes in place to ensure safe use of those products.
I guess all I'm saying, as I look at this, one thing that jumps out is they're probably treating patients who are going through with drug withdrawal, alcohol or benzo. Because you got clonidine, you
Yep.
got injectable antipsychotics, you got several antipsychotics, you got thiamine. That's just one patient. Now, that's the kind of inmate that you want to be treated.
I can't answer that medically because
All I'm saying is that
Yeah,
is
that-
justification for making them justify each drug that we.
I mean, these are things that the prescribers involved in this medical care feel that they can use to treat patients in the jail without having to take them elsewhere.
On call 24/7?
I would assume so, an MD, but I think some of it also APRNs.
Sure.
The folks that I talked to on it were MDs.
Do they actually need some approval or blessing from us to do this?
Well, what I'm asking for, Harold, is the previous guidance given from the board is that you are only able to apply for that permit if you have like 24/7, 365 RN, APRN, or MD staffing. And these are smaller facilities that do not have that. And so what they're asking for is we would also like to be eligible for that permit. We realize we don't have the same level of staffing the board has asked for in the past, but we're also not asking for any controlled substances. So they want a shorter list of drugs to be able to treat a shorter list of ailments that are easier to treat instead of having to ship.
Without having on-site 24/7 coverage.
Yep.
Will this have to go back and go through a little bit of a rulemaking,
No.
a rule update?
This would be under the current institutional dispensary permits. It would just be, hey, we've got another group, and that one, the emergency kits that we can approve are up to the board. They're not laid out in the rule itself. But I mean, what we've done in the past is, the oral dosage forms have generally been up to a single card, and then the injectables have generally been like 2 doses. So I'm like, if they really think they're going to get a bunch of patients on warfarin, I mean, they could use like 5 milligram and go, well, we can get a 2.5, a 5, a 7.5, or a 10 out of it to stabilize someone until we get PT-INR and everything else. But from all our days in school, warfarin just worries me. You're not really supposed to miss doses, but you can't really guess doses either.
Well, again, the two that maybe if they could give you some additional justification, warfarin and Lovenox are the two that stand out to me, like they're doing Doppler ultrasounds and these, visualizing DVTs and things. I don't know if that's a continuation of what they're coming in on.
Well, and
or if that's like a new start.
we could very easily say, approve the list minus these 2. If they want to review later, we want some more medical justification on it.
Is Entresto even second or third line? Why Entresto? You run the risk of.
I didn't think so. I think it's continuation of therapy on it is what it is. It's not starting. Like when I actually asked about that, somebody else,
Specify that in the thing, like that one of the.
if they have it, they can use it is the problem. But I think the approach is we do not need patients missing doses of it. I think that's the same thing with warfarin. Nobody's starting warfarin in an emergency kit. Hope not. Have to make the math work.
I can see the need.
Thank you, Dr. Boone.
Yep.
We'll see you tomorrow.
I mean, I would be willing to make a motion to approve.
Minus those two.
Just to get further, clinical clarification on justification for those two drugs. But those were just the two that stood out to me.
Yeah.
That would be my motion.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have one
I'll-
opposed.
I'll work with them. I'll tell them if they want to keep those two on, then we'll need some further medical justification that we can review at the board at a informal or formal at a future date. Last,
Pass with that in mind.
last thing I have today is, let me see what page it's on. Really, it's page 11. Where it starts. This is actually a letter from the Arkansas Healthcare Association. Been working with their exec. I mean, maybe you would know Rachel Bunt. She's been involved in this arena, long-term care for many years. We have had some inspections where it sounds like there has been a little bit of a misunderstanding about emergency kits, which you can see our emergency kit list that we've published on pages 12, 13, and kind of how they're used over the past few years. We're working with Rachel to help educate both the pharmacy and the long-term care side of industry of some of these DEA issues are real big issues. And I think we're just, we're at a point where we've got to re-educate on some of that. The way that we have seen, I've got a couple of clarifying questions that I'm going to ask you for specifically today. I think some people missed, if you go all the way to page, it's page 2 of 4 of that section, but it's page 13 of it. I think there was some confusion. I think it's just because we've had industry turnover on both sides of this, that traditionally the board has said analgesics, Schedule 2, maximum quantity of 12, that you could pick 12 total pills out of those sections of, do you want 3 hydro-10s and 3 oxy 5 milligram with nothing else in it? And then you want, 2 doses of morphine sulfate liquid, which is a concentrate. And anyway, you get to 12 in that area. I think there's been some misunderstanding where some people thought you could have 12 of every one of those, aka 72. So we're kind of rewinding some of that. This is the list that we really did in 2018-19, even though we had a couple of editions in 2024. And part of this education is at the very top of page 12. When the board last approved this, these are the drug categories and quantities that you could have one emergency kit if you have a facility with up to 70 licensed beds. And then between 70 and 120, you could have 2 kits. And if you've got over 120, you could have 3 kits. So most facilities are over 70 beds. They're in this 70 to 120 range. So most of them could actually, we would have said, well, they could have 24 Schedule 2 opioids off this list. And they could have, 16 of the 3, 4s or 5s off this list and going through that. So we're working on that. So there's basically 2 requests. One is a question of clarification I even got over the weekend. When we say 2 kits, I've never cared how exactly you design the kit. It could be a double kit. It could be split into 4 kits because you have 4 different hallways. We've never micromanaged that it has to be one tackle box or one thing. So one request was, well, if we've got a facility with 90 beds and they're in they're in an arrangement where we just want to have it all as one double kit, I think that's fine. I don't think the board would have any problem with that, but I'm seeking clarification from you guys. Anybody have any problem with that at all? Then I'll share that as yes. If you want to make it one giant kit instead of 3 individuals who's got 130 people, or 2 individuals, or if you need to split it up for your hallways, we are fine with that. We're talking about the totality for the entity itself. One of the other things that they do want to revisit is, and they're drawing some information for me, We added on page 404 on that, like we added albuterol inhalers and we let them have two, maximum quantity since it's on that specific drug, 2 albuterol inhalers per kit. So if you had 2 kits, you could have 4. But I mean, she's telling me like one of their kits that they're getting, this has been a trend for years. They're getting more and more people like post-surgery, punt them to the nursing home. Post something, they go to the nursing home. So instead of going to like a step-down unit or long-term acute care in the hospital, they're using nursing homes more and more where they're getting patient transfers at night or even weekends where they're on this huge list of meds and they're having to use the emergency kit to get them their first doses while the pharmacy's trying to get orders, trying to get processed and delivered to them. So we're going to have some requests to increase quantities of some of these meds. So
Coming,
get your heart right.
forthcoming or
Yeah.
today?
Not necessarily today, but like if the board would approve even like the informal committee to consider that and approve it at the next informal, because it'll be before February, that would be helpful. But the main thing I can help them with for now though is, yes, you could have a double single kit or a triple single kit or however you need to break it up for your facility. That will help. The other thing you can read is, I mean, she's trying to help us on that page 11 that, look, you've got to have an order for the controls before they're withdrawn from the kit. And no one is trying to do bad in this. I think the problem is people are trying to do the best they can taking care of patients that are in an acute need. And when the doctor says, give them so-and-so, like if you're in the ER or something, you grab it and you dose it. And that has had some major implications for pharmacies with DEA. We're working on some other things kind of in the background as well about how exactly orders work, clarifying they could use the electronic prescribing system to send those orders to the pharmacy as well. Any major heartburn over any of these quantities or anything?
Quantity increase, are they going to be asking on the analgesics? Because that seems the most concerning.
I think there's going to be a potential request on the analgesics. I have asked for like some data and the way that I'm having to think about this, because it makes me itch every time we talk about increasing emergency kits, because they're not intended to be a convenience box. But the way our rules are written, the pharmacy has 3 days to restock it. So this isn't a 1-day supply, it's a 3-day supply. And when I wrap my head around that of, I've got 65 people in this home, are 12 enough for 3 days? And there are instances where that might not be. If you've got an order and they have to take 2 of the Hydro 5s, well, you just took 2 of your 12.
But you would hope a lot of them already have a prescription, right?
No, the problem is they're coming to you with a written prescription or a electronic prescription. They have nothing when they get there.
But how
Like
many?
people aren't getting delivered to nursing homes with a box full of medicine the nursing home can use. It's like getting discharged from the hospital, but instead of trying to figure out what pharmacy to go to on the way home, you're taken to the nursing home and they've got a couple of hours to try to figure out how to treat you and keep you stable.
So the drugs belong to the pharmacy. The pharmacy for a facility of 70 beds or more is going to be going to that nursing home every day.
Every day.
Deliveries. But irrespective of the fact of whether they have 72 hours or not, the drugs belong to them, the service belongs to them. They're in the nursing home every day. They have some responsibility to make sure properly, so that it doesn't get full of quantities that are excessive, simply because you're not paying attention to it there.
Yep. And I think that with the re-education that she's helping with, I think you're going to have pharmacies that realize you can't wait 72 hours on exchanging these boxes. You can't always wait from Friday to Monday. You may have to restock it over the weekend. But if you have situations where you don't know, like you automatically switch it on Monday and it comes in and you go, what the heck, I'm missing this stuff. Like we're trying to point out, like, those are the pharmacy's drugs. You have to get the pharmacy's approval to release them. Therefore, the pharmacy has to have an order to release it. And that way, through this educational process, I think the pharmacies will know better what's gone to restock it.
Going back just a second to the hospital discharge. Well, am I right in thinking that one of the reasons for the change in the law about hospitals having retail pharmacies was to handle this patient being discharged problem?
Yes, but if they are sent to a nursing home, they're not going to the pharmacy to get their meds because the nursing home is going to have specific requirements of packaging or labeling and stuff to handle those meds. So this patient isn't going from the hospital to discharge and just go home. If they go straight to the nursing home, they're not going to the pharmacy first. The discharge order is passed along.
So that's the patient in the nursing home can't use the drugs they bring from home, even bottled.
They do not want to do that.
Okay.
Because
I got
it is, if you have bulk drugs in bottles, I mean, an argument is, well, it's the same drugs, but the flip side of that argument is you're going to have to do back counts on it all the time. It's not tamper evident where you go, somebody punched out number 12 before it was time.
Well, the other thing is, even if you have like a discharge prescription service that you offer, maybe 50-60% of your patients will choose it.
They'll
but
choose
the other
something else.
40 or 50 will not.
Yeah.
So it's not mandatory that patients use that service.
And I don't think that most hospitals want to get into we're now carting stock for nursing homes.
So do you need a motion on this one?
I think that we're gonna get more information of some specific ask on it. I'm asking that, you guys look at this. I mean, the thing with the kit itself, I think is helpful. But, part of this education, if Rachel was here, I'm sure she could tell you how much a lot of this has changed that I'm, just not in that area of practice. But the level of acuity they're seeing of patients and still the number of stat orders they're seeing on some things like albuterol is very high. I think she had a facility that said they had taken albuterol inhalers out as a stat order like 480 times in a year. And I'm going, all right, so let's go back and see, first of all, if you pull it out of the emergency kit, like that could either be that patient's albuterol from then on, you got to worry about labeling stuff, or if they're doing, using a aero chamber with everybody as they're just getting a dose off of it. But they've had that many stat orders on albuterol, even though they've got nebulizer available as well. They're seeing tons of orders where they have the inhaler and the nebulizer because one may be fine or they may not be able to use it and they have to switch to the other. But it's busy.
I hate to stick on this issue, but on the hospital transfer deal, normally there will be a transfer agreement between the hospital and the nursing home. And it seems to me that the nursing home ought to be insisting on the hospital doing something like that as a part of that transfer agreement to handle that issue.
I think that they are generally getting that as part of the transfer. The problem with that is, it's just like if you get discharged from the hospital, you're going to get from the hospital to the home. A lot of discharge orders, in my experience, and Brian would know this better than me, like those discharge orders sometimes aren't finalized till right when you're getting discharged.
Yeah,
print of scripts.
I've run into this, I think, one time in the past. The way that they wanted the meds packaged.
Yeah.
Was just not conducive.
It's not
to normal
logistically conducive.
Pharmacy operations in a hospital.
And you're passing them on to who's going to be taking care of them after that. If they're in an A bed, you're not filling it at all. But it's just the time suck of they get there and it takes time for the paperwork. So even if the pharmacy gets it there within 2 hours, hey, I thought I was going to be discharged now. They can't release the prescriptions until the patient is discharged. And all of a sudden they show up and it's time for dosing. So it's tough.
The hospital now can fill it if they let you out of the hospital. Like in the middle of the night.
Well, if they have either an endorsement to do discharge, which we only ever had 8 hospitals take us up on, or they have a retail permit. And I think we're in process of like 3 of those right now. I think we've granted either 1 or 2 and have a couple more coming through the queue.
And we were willing to, fill this is a while back before really the MOU or anything came up. We were willing to do it, but those cards have like the day of the month in them. And they wanted them a specific way, and the way discharges work, there wasn't enough time to do. It just couldn't work logistically by the time the patient got out the door.
Anyway, that's my request on that. I got the clarification I need and we're on another. We did have one more surrender of a pharmacist for you guys to consider. Some of you guys will recognize the name, Leah Deshawn Robinson, pharmacist PD 07642, case 2025-058. She had been in the support group years ago, but we had a diversion issue that was presented to us. She was unsure if she was going to retire or try to go back through support group. She has decided that she would retire and has issued a voluntary agreement for a permanent surrender of her license. I would ask the board to accept.
I can wait for historical remembrance. So how long ago did she enter the program? How long was she in?
I believe she was caught in 06, started with the support group in 08, and I think graduated from the support group roughly a decade ago.
And then recently?
Like a week and a half ago.
The reason I ask is we routinely try to think back, do we want to take somebody off of monitoring program or not? And I mean, this is just another evidence.
She emailed us that this is what she was going to do. We are going to have to get her to actually sign a copy rather than put it in a typed signature and emailing me. I've got 2 of them like that right now.
So
but I would ask you guys to go ahead and accept it.
Motion to accept. Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was accepted.
That's all I have.
So is tomorrow only hearings or is there any other subjects?
We'll probably figure out something we forgot to talk about today or need to revisit, but I think it's just scheduled for hearings.
How many hearings?
But we are calling a hard halt at the end of the day. It depends on how much you guys want to talk. But we have told our court reporters and our hearing officers that we will be done before 5 o'clock so that they know they have a normal day. So if you want to go much longer than that, we may just have to hold it until the next meeting. 9 o'clock, yes, sir.
Do you have dates on our next informals?
We do not. We need to pick a date.
Okay.
Soon.
Did I hear correctly?
It is difficult because you have to be on Zoom, on camera, identified the whole time. There's a whole new state policy based on a law that passed that we can show you. It's difficult. I know, I get it. It's one of those where if we had to have you for a quorum on something, then that's when we'd say, like, if we have an emergency hearing and then we want to do it on Zoom instead of phone call, we would do that. That way you have to be on camera, identified where everyone in the public can hear you. We have to open up potential Zoom for other people. There's some discussions on that. But if you're not needed for a quorum, it's easier just to not have a board member on Zoom. Or Zoom, either one. All right, thank you guys. We'll see you.